Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and I'm recording this on June 15th. We're going to be going over what has been transpiring in the Middle East and my perspective on it. So please help support my work by going to my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and donating. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee on the homepage. You can also be a paid member to my Patreon channel. I do these videos for free. I have thousands of videos out there for free. Please help support my work. Make sure you subscribe to all my channels. I have 4 channels on YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. Share the links. Ask your social media to follow me. I greatly appreciate it. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the great supplements that I offer. Throughout this broadcast, I'm going to tell you how to stack these different items to target certain systems based on your affordability. These are supplements that I take every day. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Let's start with one great product that I have, and that is the Structural Nano Silver toothpaste. This has no fluoride in it. This toothpaste will whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, help with your gum line health, and reduce the inflammation at your gum line. By taking this toothpaste and using this every day, you're going to improve your oral hygiene, and that's very important, extremely important, because good oral hygiene will help with your vascular system and your valvular system. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get a few tubes of this toothpaste. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. I also have Structural Nano Silver soaps. These soaps are very high quality. It's what I use. You can get it in peppermint, in lavender, in charcoal tea tree, and also in lemongrass. Please get a few bars for your household, help support the work that I do, and help support your health and wellness. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. If you spend $150 or more, you do get a free gift. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and pick up the Structural Nano Silver toothpaste and Structural Nano Silver soaps. Very high quality. All right, let's go to live now.
And Alex, you were touching upon the proxies, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, Iran being the head of the octopus, the proxies being the tentacles. How do the proxies factor into the latest exchange in the airstrikes? You know, we've been seeing Iran use its proxies so it could claim no responsibility. But now that has changed. So how do these proxies factor in at this point?
Well, Iran had always hoped that its proxies would serve as a deterrent against Israel's attack on Iranian nuclear facilities. And so very interesting that Israel understood the strategy of Iran and worked to file down these terror proxies one by one, starting with Hamas, which has been dramatically degraded, then to file down Hezbollah, which was believed to be Iran's greatest asset in its fight against Israel, to the extent that since this latest round has started, Hezbollah hasn't fired a single rocket or drone at Israel. So Israel defanged Iran's forward-facing military against the Jewish state, and that has left it open to Israeli attacks, only with the remaining ballistic missiles that it has to fire from 2,000 kilometers away at Israel. And Israel is proving that even while some do get through, that they are able to intercept the overwhelming majority of those ballistic missiles.
And Iran gaining nuclear capability, that's not just a concern for Israel, but really for the international community at large. When it comes to international security, can you talk about how critical of a juncture the world is at right now?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we've seen already that Iran destabilized Iraq, it has destabilized Syria, it has destabilized Lebanon, it has destabilized Gaza, it has destabilized Yemen, and it has done this on the route to being a nuclear breakout state. And we saw the damage that they did to Israel before they achieved nuclear capabilities. And we could only imagine how much worse that terror could be if Iran was operating under a nuclear umbrella that could always threaten a nuclear strike if Israel were to attack any of its terror proxies. We've also seen how Iran has provided ballistic missiles and drone technology to the Russians to be used in their war against Ukraine. So here we are seeing the filing down of one of the critical Axis pieces against America and the West, you have China, Russia, and Iran, and Israel doing the dirty work of taking one of the most radical elements of this axis out of the picture.
And let's talk about that. President Trump has been very vocal in terms of supporting Israel, the two very strong in their allyship. When it comes to, actually getting directly involved, where do you see that? Do you see that actually happening? As you mentioned, Israel right now doing the heavy lifting.
Well, Israel's doing the heavy lifting, but it's being done with weapons that were provided by the Trump administration. It is being done in full coordination with the Trump administration. I think everybody can assume not only did Israel get maybe a yellow light to do this attack, but actually got a full green light from the President of the United States to attack. We've seen that the United States has already moved military components into the region. It has provided direct support for the defense of Israel, which includes the shooting down of drones and ballistic missiles that are flying from Iran to Israeli population centers. And the president saying earlier today that there is a possibility that they could get involved at some point in the future. But it is believed that Israel at this point has to continue doing the heavy lifting, taking out all the ballistic missile capabilities. And then you may see the United States get involved at the end in order to use bombs that it has that Israel does not possess in order to take out some of the deep underground nuclear facilities that Israel simply cannot reach with the types of bombs that it has. Only the United States has bombs large enough to get these underground facilities, specifically at Bundo, which has not yet been attacked.
And Alex, I did want to share with our viewers a statement that President Trump made saying, quote, Iran and Israel should make a deal and will make a deal, just like I got India and Pakistan to make, in that case, by using trade with the United States to bring reason, cohesion, and sanity into the talks with two excellent leaders who were able to quickly make a decision and stop. And during my first term, Serbia and Kosovo were going at it hot and heavy, as they have been for many decades. And this longtime conflict was ready to break out into war. I stopped it. He goes on to say, there is peace, at least for now, because of my intervention, and it will stay that way. Likewise, we will have peace soon between Israel and Iran. Many calls and meetings now taking place. I do a lot and never get credit for anything, but that's okay. The people understand. Make the Middle East great again. There have been, some talks between Israel and Iran when it comes to the nuclear program, along with the United States. Those talks have since stalled. Where do you see those talks going, if at all?
Well, I don't think there's going to be any more talks about de-escalation at this point. Israel is de-escalating the Iranian nuclear program on its own terms. It has already gone way too far in this campaign to turn back now before there is a complete success. But it is believed that within the coming weeks that Iran will no longer be a nuclear threat. It will no longer have control of these terror proxies to terrorize the entire region. And we might see the overthrow of the Iranian regime, either with Ayatollah Khamenei taken out by an Israeli strike, or preferably even by the overthrow by its own people. But what I would say is that the Prime Minister of Israel has, on many occasions, including during these last several days, indicating that Israel is not the enemy of Iran, and the Israeli people do not consider themselves the enemies of the Iranian people. And should there be a different regime in place, no longer an oppressive Islamic republic that is hell-bent on destroying Israel, that Israel could in fact normalize relations with the Iranian people, and absolutely wants to do that if we can get past these next few weeks.
When it comes to the general sentiment and the mood of the Israeli people right now, it's an incredibly tense time. There have been lives lost in the conflict. Is it one of determination, one of hope? How would you assess the atmosphere?
The Israeli people are absolutely among the most resilient people in the entire world, and it was been understood for a long time that there would be a cost, in fact, a tremendous cost of fighting this war, and Israel's forced to fight this war because it allowed the buildup of these terror proxies and the Iranian nuclear program on its watch for so many years. And unfortunately, that's the price that is being paid now for fighting this war. But again, the Israelis are resilient. They understand the cost, they understand the risk, but they also understand the opportunity that if Israel will succeed in completing this campaign along the trajectory it's doing now, that this could usher in decades of peace in which Israel will no longer be forced to fight these types of wars, and a peaceful period can ensue.
And Alex, you answered my next question, but I was going to say, President Trump saying make the Middle East great again. Do you feel as though that area, that region of the world is on the precipice of entering into a new era? And could the geopolitical landscape be forever changed because of what is happening right now?
Oh, absolutely. This is a historic moment for Israel and the entire region. And there's really two simple steps to define, two difficult steps to implement towards changing the face of the region. The first is defeating the terrorists. Israel is proving that it is not afraid to defeat terrorists, something which I think is a lesson for Western countries all over the world. But the second is to normalize relations with moderate actors. And Israel, with the help of the United States during the first Trump administration, did normalize relations with Bahrain, with the United Arab Emirates, with Morocco. It is understood that the Saudis could be a major component in future normalization elements. And then that final step will be, what happens with the people of Gaza? What happens to the drive to force a two-state solution? I do believe that that's the final step here in this regional conflict to find an alternative to this two-state solution, because I don't believe at this point that Israel is going to be willing to cede even 1 inch of territory to create a Palestinian state that would look exactly like Gaza looked before it was attacked on October 7th.
Alex, so much to discuss as this conflict continues between Israel and Iran. Before we let you go, what are you specifically keeping a very close eye on? What would you like our viewers to know about what is happening right now?
Well, again, I think it's the surprise of the Israeli technological superiority, their ability to attack at will inside Iran. I think it really demonstrates the emergence of Israel as a military superpower that is going to be able to redefine the region on its own terms in the coming weeks and years. And we have to see whether the United States ultimately does get involved in this conflict in an offensive capacity, and how long this lasts. Will this be a couple of days? Will this be a couple of weeks? And will the Islamic Republic be standing at the end of this, or will the Iranian people be part of a revolutionary process to take over the country and lead it once again in a pro-Western, pro-Israel direction?
As you mentioned, Alex, history in the making. We appreciate you taking the time to join us here on Live Now from Fox.
Thanks for having me.
Before we step away for a brief break, I did want to leave you with this live look right here of Tel Aviv in Israel as Israel and Iran continue to exchange airstrikes. Any development, any breaking news segment, we will be sure to bring that to you right here on Live Now from Fox. We'll be right back.
Let's listen to Al Jazeera here, see what they have to say.
From the destruction in Brighteon and in Ramadan the day before, people are quite concerned, but they still, I think, generally speaking, support the Israeli action.
I just wanted to talk about Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his comments, because he's been speaking to a US media outlet and he said a few things, including that regime change in Iran could be a result of what we're doing. Is that really the aim here? He doesn't seem to be hiding it anymore, almost. And what does he or Israel benefit from a change in leadership in Iran?
Netanyahu is talking about a regime change for many years. It's not new, and of course, with this attack, he probably thinks that this is the moment. Whether that's the case, we really don't know. It doesn't depend on him. We didn't see really regime change coming from the war from the outside. In Iraq, we've seen a regime change after the US has occupied the whole of Iraq. And this is not the case here. Israel is not going to occupy Iran. I am, of course, Israel is hoping that a new regime in Iran will be more sympathetic to it and less dangerous. But I think it's more of a slogan than a real working plan.
I mean, can that ever be possible? We know that across the region there is support for Palestinians with Israeli occupation continuing. Even if there was a leadership change, that situation won't change.
Yes, I'm not sure that Netanyahu goes into these details. We have seen that paradoxically, the more democratic the states in the region are, the less sympathetic they are to Israel. Turkey is an example vis-a-vis the Gulf states, which are less democratic. So I don't know. I'm not sure that this will play into the hands of Israel if Iran will be democratic. But yes, I think for the moment this is a big slogan. The regime in Iran is portrayed as the big Satan, as the source of all evil in the Middle East and maybe even in the world. And Netanyahu seems to himself, I think, as kind of a crusader who is fighting this evil regime for the sake of the people of Israel and for the sake of the Western world.
Yeah, thank you very much, Miron Rappaport there for your time.
Thank you.
Well, there's mounting concern that these attacks between Iran and Israel could turn into a wider regional conflict. As that threat looms, our defence editor Alex Kotopoulos takes a closer look at the military might of both countries.
This phase of the conflict between Israel and Iran is being fought with specific weapons. Israel's main offensive capability is its air force of 340 combat-capable aircraft, made up of advanced F-15 and F-16 fighter planes and at least 45 F-35 stealth jets. Aircraft firing air-launched missiles and dropping bunker-buster bombs have been the main weapons used. Israel says its special forces teams within Iran have also been launching explosive drones at targets, aiming to kill senior military leaders and other key figures and destroy air defense sites. Iran also has a missile and drone force. Despite dozens of drones being launched, they're easily being shot down by Israel's air defenses and squadrons of jets. But its missile force is large and powerful. Long-range cruise missiles like the Pave and Sumar have ranges up to 2,500 kilometers and fly under radar cover. A large supply of modern solid-fueled missiles like the Sajil-2 means that they can be launched within minutes, making interception by Israeli fighter jets less likely. Although they're limited in number, Iran's hypersonic missiles like the Fateh-1 and Fateh-2 can travel up to 15 times the speed of sound. That's 18,500 kilometers an hour. These missiles are the most likely to penetrate Israel's powerful air defense network. Israel said that the strikes are ongoing and they will not allow Iran to have the ability to make a nuclear weapon. But what hasn't been mentioned so far is Israel's own arsenal of at least 90 nuclear weapons and the long-range Jericho-3 ballistic missiles that would deliver them.
Now, Doug Bundo is a senior fellow at the Cato Institute and says President Donald Trump is unlikely to increase US involvement in Israel's attack on Iran.
I don't see an easy solution here. Both sides have to back away. Iran is not going to surrender. Israel doesn't want to acknowledge that it's failed in its desire to destroy the nuclear program. Both of them could keep fighting each other for quite some time. It's long been believed that only the United States could try to reach the deepest of the facilities that Iran has. But that would be a dramatic step, probably too far for President Trump. He has criticized endless wars in the Middle East. He criticized President Bush over the Iraq debacle. Much of his own base does not want to see a war there. Even some of the hawks want to focus on Asia, not the Middle East. And I suspect he understands that the step into that war will draw attention away from domestic policy issues that he wants to focus on. So this is a very difficult choice for the Trump administration. All the polls indicate that the American public leans towards Israel and kind of wanting them to defend themselves, but that a majority of Americans want nothing to do with entering that war. The American people really are tired of fighting wars in the Middle East. They don't think it's in America's interest. I think his administration is also split. He has people in that administration who lean very strongly towards Israel, who probably would like to get involved to help Israel. But he also has a number of people who are much more skeptical. And it's believed that that skepticism is why he replaced his first national security advisor, Mike Waltz. Well, the timing is certainly very suspicious. That is that there was still discussions going on between the United States and Iran. The possibility of a negotiated settlement was there. And then Iran had not taken any steps irrevocably towards nuclear weapons. So by starting the war, Israel has made it very difficult for Iran to come back to negotiations. It would be perceived as a surrender. So I think that was probably one of the objectives, at least in the timing of the Israeli action.
An Israeli strike has hit a residential area in central Gaza. Palestinians desperately run for cover in Gaza's Burej refugee camp following the attack on Sunday, and the strike injured several people and damaged much of the area's infrastructure. Civilians there have been repeatedly targeted by Israeli forces in recent days.
Let's go to
Discover
France 24
Luca
here.
Faloni's denim shirt, crafted in Italy from luxurious denim for a robust yet soft hand.
To get there and trying to broker a kind of peace deal amongst people. Now, he then says, however, we can easily get a deal done between Iran and Israel and end this bloody conflict. Of course, Donald Trump there trying once again his peace through strength approach. Well, this morning he doubled down on that, saying that Iran and Israel should make a deal and will make a deal. And then went on to tout some of his own personal achievements, like he says, India and Pakistan. He also went on to mention Serbia and Kosovo, Egypt and Ethiopia. He then made it quite personal, saying that I never get credit for anything, but that's okay. The people understand. But Donald Trump here is wanting something to come to pass. And of course, the man who wrote the book, The Art of the Deal, is looking for a deal between these arch foes, as it were.
And while we're talking, Fraser, I don't know if you've seen the news, but this interview that Benjamin Netanyahu was giving with Fox TV, suggesting that, first of all, the US pilots are helping shoot down Iranian drones into Israel. And that was something that, remember, a day ago, the Iranians were saying that if there's any help from allies, their interests would be targeted. Secondly, that's according to Reuters, to US officials saying that Trump has vetoed in the past couple of days an Israeli plan to kill Iran's supreme leader. Have you been hearing, is that completely out of the blue? Have you been hearing that suggestions, reported sources in the past few days?
Well, I mean, this kind of plan has been something that the Israelis have had on the table for a long time. This is no surprise that they were wanting to take out, the top echelons of power in Iran. They've done that with the Houthis. They've done that, with Hezbollah, and they've done that with Hamas as well. So it's no surprise that that is what they wanted to strike. I think the fact that Donald Trump vetoed it shows that the US would think that that would be a major escalation in things if they were to try to target the supreme leader. Of course, Donald Trump is not necessarily looking for regime change, but he's looking for people who will be sympathetic to a negotiating tactic with the Israelis and with the United States. So he has hinted at that even just a couple of days ago when some of the upper echelons of the military were taken out in the Israeli strikes. And he said, well, they're not going to be at the negotiating table on Sunday because they're dead. So Donald Trump is still looking for this deal and is trying to not get involved militarily. And it's possible that he thought that that would be a whole different level of escalation if the Israelis did indeed target the Ayatollah. And I must say, I've not had that confirmed to me myself, but it is being reported by Reuters, an extremely trustworthy news source, and they're quoting 2 US officials. So the likelihood of that being correct are quite high.
Very brief word, because President Trump is about to go, I believe, in the next few hours to a place that he'd like to call the 53rd state. He's going to Canada, isn't he, for the G7 summit. It looks, according to Reuters, that all of the leaders at least the European leaders attending, will plan to issue a joint statement on Iran calling for de-escalation, which is interesting to see whether that is signed by President Trump. Give us a sense of what you're hearing on President Trump going there. I understand that this is clearly going to be top of the agenda now.
Yeah, this is likely to be one of the main things that they are talking about. Of course, there'll be some of the European leaders will be wanting to bring up the war in Ukraine. There's not really been much movement on that in the last couple of weeks. Donald Trump has tried to get Vladimir Putin to the negotiating table in that 50-minute phone call he had with Putin just yesterday. Trump himself admitted that they didn't talk about Ukraine very much. So the Europeans will be trying to get the pressure back on to the Americans to get Ukraine pushed up the agenda. Donald Trump will be wanting to talk about Iran. We also know he's got some bilateral meetings scheduled for the sidelines of the G7, not necessarily with G7 leaders. We are also hearing that the president of Brazil may be heading there for some little bilateral meetings. So we'll see whether that is going to happen on the Tuesday or not. There has been some time carved out in Trump's agenda for those meetings, but so far they've not been confirmed by the White House who those meetings will be with.
Fraser, good to talk to you. Fraser Jackson, our correspondent in Washington. Let's go to Jerusalem. Let's speak to the head of the IDF International Press, Masha Mickelson. Great to talk to you this evening. Welcome to Press 24. First of all, can you talk us through the current operations ongoing, particularly in light of news that Benjamin Netanyahu has just given to Fox News, not ruling out that the Supreme Leader could be a target?
What I can say, without addressing comments made by our political echelon, who are obviously the ones making the decision, is that Israel has made unprecedented progress over the past 3 days. The IDF, our Air Force, are conducting operations that are of unprecedented scale. Just yesterday, while we were facing yet another barrage of rockets and UAVs from Iran, the Israeli Air Force was defending the skies and the citizens of Israel while simultaneously striking in Iran and in Yemen, targeting terror activists and terror facilities. And what we're doing for the past over 48 hours now is fighting a double existential threat: Iran's race to create a nuclear weapon and their ballistic missiles. What you're seeing in Israel, the hits to the civilian homes, those are tragic pictures, but this is a hit by a ballistic missile. I want to ask you a question. How would this look if that missile would have a nuclear warhead? And that is what we can't allow, and that is why our airplanes and our fighter jets are continuously in the skies of Iran. And over those past 48 hours, we have been able to neutralize a lot of threats on our ways through Western Iran to Tehran, eliminate a lot of aerial defense systems of the IRGC, and now the path to Tehran is relatively cleared, and we're gaining more and more operational freedom on our way to Tehran, striking Iranian terror targets there and eliminating this existential threat to the people of Israel.
So that 1,500 kilometer distance from Tel Aviv to Tehran, you say effectively now Israel has control of the skies.
I'm saying that we're getting very close to the control of the skies. There's still a ways to go. The threat is still there. It's not a one and done deal. Iran has been working for years covertly to build up its nuclear abilities, and moreover to spread those nuclear abilities deep underground within population centers, fully understanding the implications of that to its own people. And Israel is now acting not only to remove that threat, but to make sure that they can't build it up again.
And you're saying that, you posed it to me as a question, but the goal now is preventing the ability to create a nuclear bomb. It is not, I heard one of your colleagues at the IDF say, it is not for regime change in Iran.
The decision about a regime change in Iran is that of the Iranian people. We have never had anything against the Iranian people. The Jewish people and the Farsi people, the Iranian people, have always been historically very close, but what we're facing now is a regime that has openly stated again and again and again that they are acting to destroy Israel, annihilate Israel, destroy the West, and destroy America. They have a clock in Tehran counting down to the destruction of Israel. And we are not going to stand idly by and let that happen.
Can you either set back the ability for Iran to create a nuclear weapon without US help? And how much difference does US help make? And I say that because we've seen the damage on the ground at Natanz. But we're not seeing, clearly we hear time and time again that the facility is deep underground and the ability to destroy those. And of course, there are implications for radiation levels becoming a major concern. We've heard from the UN's Atomic Agency calling for those attacks to stop as a result of that.
The operation right now is a result of months of practical preparation and years of meticulous planning and very precise intelligence. What Israel is doing, it is doing as of now alone. And we're able to act alone. We have a lot of innovations up our sleeve that have not been revealed yet, and we're not going to continue giving information to our enemy. But we're able to act alone. And as I said just yesterday, the Air Force has proven once again how far it can stretch its abilities, achieving operational achievements in Yemen, in Iran, and over Israel simultaneously. The U.S. is one of our closest allies. They're great friends, and there's great communication with them, but they're a sovereign country. They have their own army, and they can make their own decisions on what is best for the United States, while the IDF is acting on what is best for Israel and this region and the world.
We're hearing a lot about Mossad's involvement through sources in Iran. Comparisons being made to Ukraine's Operation Spider's-Web, the ability to use and operate drones inside to carry out targeted assassinations. To what extent, obviously security operation details that are classified you can't, but what details can you give us on that?
Unfortunately, I'm not able to give a lot of details about other security agencies' work, but again, Israel is a country with a very wide net of security agencies, and we are proving time and time again that we have innovative solutions, that we are able to face challenges presented to us by the worst of our enemies, Iran, who is operating for years a network of proxies, this same network of proxies that has started the October 7th attack over a year and a half ago, and we are still standing strong, and we're prevailing time and time again against that Iranian threat.
Can you tell me, Masha, how much difference it makes having allies support when it comes to shooting down drones and missiles? We know from the Brits in the past few hours, up until a few hours ago, said they hadn't sent its fighter jets from Akrotiri as they had to shoot down Iranian drones last year. But the US saying, according to Benjamin Netanyahu's interview on Fox, that US pilots are shooting down those drones. And we're seeing some of the images of clearly the Iron Dome being penetrated. Just talk us through the importance of that support from allies in defending Israel.
What I think is that over the past year, I think it's safe to say the veil around Iran is being uncovered. And it's very clear that they pose a threat to the entire region. And there are many, many factors and many players who share the same interest with us to fight against the Iranian threat. I think the United States understand that. I think that a lot of European countries understand that. But Israel, again, is showing that it is able to act alone. And unfortunately, yes, we are seeing hits to our civilian population centers that are not misfires. Iran is targeting those population centers. And while we have an extremely advanced and very successful aerial defense system, it is not foolproof. And a lot of lives are being saved, luckily, by sheltering protocols of the Israeli people. But yes, when we're being fired at with hundreds of missiles and UAVs, we can intercept over 90% of them, but still it would mean that some would penetrate. Israel is able to defend it, and it's a price that is very heavy on us. But again, imagine what that price would be a year from now, 2 years from now, if those same missiles had nuclear warheads, which is why we have to act now and are acting now.
Yeah, Iran continues to say that it's not creating nuclear weapons. In the meantime, clearly, as you say, that devastation caused to Israel, Iran saying women and children have been killed. So to a renowned poet in Tehran, a national horse riding champion, innocent people with no interest in conflict.
This war is a tragic thing. This operation that we're in is, again, to remove this existential threat. And our intel collected over years is showing without a doubt the efforts that Iran has been making can no longer be interpreted as going any other way other than to create a nuclear weapon. Ignoring that further would lead us to a situation where every day we would know less and less and less about what they're doing, and that's just a threat that we cannot allow to our people. And again, the IRGC, the Iranian regime, is planting those same nuclear facilities, those same labs, centrifuges, launchers of ballistic missiles in the middle of civilian population. And while you're seeing on one side that Israel is striking with extreme precision, unfortunately, yes, sometimes that means striking in a sensitive area, a complex area. but Iran is taking weapons of mass destruction, conventional quote unquote weapons, and targeting them at civilian neighborhoods where no military facility is located. That's the difference between us and our enemy. We're operating to remove this threat while doing the best we can to remain precise and intelligence based against our enemy.
And in the meantime, the field of war now, the primary field of conflict is Iran, and the second theatre of war is Gaza. What does that mean militarily?
It means that Israel is facing a multi-front war over the past year and a half. Iran is nothing new. Yes, we are reaching a new phase in operations against them, but their intentions have been unveiled time and time again over the past few months. And over this year and a half, we have shown that we are able, as the IDF, to run our operations in Gaza against Hamas, to defeat Hamas, and to keep acting to bring our hostages home. 53 hostages that are still being held by a terror organization for over 600 days. Simultaneously, we have acted against Hezbollah in Lebanon. We have kept operations ongoing in Judea and Samaria. And yes, we are acting against the Houthis in Yemen and against the Iranian terror regime. Israel has been used, unfortunately, to fight this multi-front war, and this is what we will have to keep doing if that means protecting our people.
And I know you would regard the work of international journalists as deeply important in verifying what's going on. We are more than 600 days into this conflict in Gaza, this conflict to which there isn't an international correspondent team allowed in to verify what's going on. Does that not trouble you on a personal level to be able to understand and verify what's happening?
That touches me on a personal level twofold. I work with great international journalists every day. I work with great army commanders every day, and we are acting within the idea to verify facts, to get precise information out. But I will ask you, as a member of the media, where does that leave journalists who need to verify the facts that they're taking? How much more do we have to say that we're fighting against terror organizations who have been caught in lies time and time again, only for the media to time and time again rely on those lies and run those headlines, waiting for them to be refuted without drawing lessons from the past? War is a complex reality. Gaza is a place that is taken over by a horrible terrorist organization. And while the IDF every time places an emphasis on getting precise and truthful information out, we're fighting against terrorist organizations who do not operate by the same standards and are not held to the same standards by the international media.
Well, you say that, myself, me and colleagues have covered wars for 20 years and have covered inside the tip of the spear and conflict zones to be able to verify what's going on. You talk about Hamas propaganda and propaganda from Israel as well, to the point to which those ambulance workers in Rafah, where we were told that the ambulance lights weren't on, the paramedics, the teams as part of that convoy were shot at, and it took a mobile phone emerging from one of the dead bodies of one of the paramedics that we saw the non-stop shooting despite the lights being on. So that gets to the heart, doesn't it, of why teams need to verify and not just listen to either side in the process.
But that also gets to the point why it's so important for us to verify what we say. We have come out with a review of the situation, with the details as we knew them ongoing. We get the information that we have and verify it and put it out to the international media and to the global media. When we have mistakes, when we have information that is not sufficient and not up to the standards that we work according to, we come clean. We say this was not good enough. We didn't do a good enough job. And we have said that openly. I have sat with international journalists in the room as we went over the details of that operational review, understanding what happened that evening, minute by minute.
Misha, good to talk to you this evening. Misha Michelson, IDF International Press spokesperson. Thank you for talking to France 24.
Thank you.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the gel. You can get the gel in the tube form or in the quick dispenser form. Here. It's a dual purpose product. You can use it as an aftershave. You can use it on your wounds, like a cut, an abrasion, or a minor burn. It'll help to heal it quicker. If you're not feeling well or someone around you is not feeling well, put it on your hands, around your mouth, around your eyes, around your nose, around your ears. Lightly coat your nostrils. It stays active for 5.5 hours. You can use it as a daily skincare. So it's a dual purpose product. So please go to my store and get the gel in the quick dispenser or in the tube form, And have some at work, have some at home. You never know when you need it. Very important to have available. Also, I have a great foundational supplement to build your health protocol on. Taking a multivitamin is super important. And this multivitamin has vitamin A and vitamin D3 and the B vitamins and folate and manganese and selenium. It is a great foundational multivitamin to build off of. So it's easy to digest, and multivitamins are very important for you because many of them are cofactors for enzymatic activity. So if you don't have those cofactors, those enzymes don't work properly. So to have proper cellular function, you need those cofactors. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the multivitamin. And again, this is easy to digest, and it's a great start for your health protocol. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. If you spend $150 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. So let's listen to G0. About Israel attacking Iran.
Hi, everybody. Ian Bremmer here, and a quick take to end your week. And we're talking, of course, about the war that Israel has just launched against Iran. Lots of things to talk about. First, perhaps most importantly, is the role the United States has and has not played. They were fully aware that these attacks were coming down the pipe earlier in the week. It looks to me like at least since Monday. And that's why the U.S. embassies all nearby were forced to remove all non-essential personnel, Iraq, Kuwait, Bahrain, etc. Anything basically within Iranian range of missile strikes. And that should have made it fairly clear to everyone that there was a likelihood of imminent strikes, though not to the extent that the Israelis launched. But again, Trump could have done a lot to push back, didn't have to provide operational intelligence. He could have made this public. He could have said, I don't want it to happen. He didn't do any of those things. He gave, at very least, a blinking yellow light, if not a direct green. And so the U.S. continues to be, and Trump continues to be by far the strongest supporter of Israel in the world. Now, Trump, of course, has wanted to be a peacemaker. He's wanted to end wars. He's not been effective at doing so with the Russians. Quite disappointed in the fact that the Russians haven't been willing to come to the table and accept a ceasefire, even as the Ukrainians are. Hasn't been successful with the Iranians. He had made some progress. The likelihood of a deal was looking like it was going to be much smaller. It was going to require the Americans to accept at least near-term enrichment until some consortium of external powers was put together that had not yet been defined. Trump was getting irritated with that. He was getting impatient with it. He didn't want this to go military. He clearly, one of the reasons that Mike Waltz was removed as national security advisor was less about Signalgate, which was really a Pete Hegseth Secretary of Defense problem. It was more about the fact that Waltz was pushing so hard to move towards support for a war against Iran and Iranians' nuclear capabilities. And there you had a lot of John Bolton vibes that Trump did not like at all. And so he was more willing to push him out and now appoint him as ambassador to the UN. That's the backdrop of what here happened. I will say that I'm really surprised that, given how this was telegraphed, that the Iranians were caught so flat-footed. That they were doing their plans, of course, but I mean, certainly military leadership should have recognized that there was imminent danger to them, and so they should have been taking precautions, not meeting together, been in more secure sites. And of course, that wasn't true at all. And a fair amount of Iran's top military leadership has been decapitated by Israel. And so that's a big deal. It's a huge success for the Israelis, much as we saw against Hezbollah. And just as everyone thought Hezbollah was the strongest military that wasn't attached to a state in the world, and so Israel needed to be careful, and it turned out Israel actually had the cards, had the military intelligence capabilities. It looks like the same thing is true now for Iran, a lot bigger, a lot more capable, a massive military, a large country with a lot of money, and yet operational incapacity in dealing with the Israelis. And so they've gotten themselves blown up. This is yet one more example of the world turning towards what I call a G0 environment, a lack of global leadership,
All right.
a law of
DrPaulCottrell is going to intervene because these clowns don't know what the hell is going on. You can look at this in some sort of Westphalian world where there's, you know, there's the lens of international affairs and all this crap, right? What's happening is a battle of soul roots. This goes all the way back to the Zohar. This has been written down for thousands of years, all right? Pre-Zohar. It's a battle of Jacob and Esau. And Esau has to be split into what is called positive Esau and negative Esau. Esau is going to have to repent. And the ones that repent will align with Jacob, and Jacob is also aligned with Ishmael. And during this time period, there's going to be a great war, and the soul root of Esau, negative, which Satan is attached to, will die. This is emblematic in the story in the Bible where Esau's head is chopped off, where the body is not buried in the cave, but the head is. Okay? Because it was his intellect that was allowed to be buried with the patriarchs and not the body, because the body is animalistic and Satan is attached to the body. All right? So that's what we're seeing. It's the great battle of the soul roots. Now the problem comes in is that these soul roots gain and lose energy based on a Fib sequence, a Fibonacci sequence. And there are times of strength during the day at an hourly level, and also at a weekly level, all right? And also, you know, during the month level, and then going into decades and centuries level, right? So there may be some years, some decades where Esau is stronger than Jacob, and some decades Jacob is stronger than Esau, and then there's low frequency and then high frequency strengths. All right. But what is starting to happen is that there is a high frequency strength that's coupling with a low frequency strength that is aligning with Jacob. All right. What this basically means is that more war and more destruction is going to take place. Jacob and Esau, there's never a time where Jacob and Esau are sharing power. It's always inversely related. Okay. So this means that at least at the yearly level, from February, March, April, May, June, July, and we're in June right now, those are the months where Jacob is strong, where they need to strike. August, September, October, November, December, January are the months that Esau gains strength. If you look back at some bad times that have happened in the United States, they've been around September and October. That's during a strength of Esau. Esau is evil, all right? But within Esau is the opportunity to repent and align with his twin brother. But that has to happen through a great separation, all right? Where this positive negative force is polarized. You know, if like you look at a crystal you know, or a molecule where there's a positive or negative charge to it. All right. All right. And it's like stabilized. Right. But if you pull the positive negative away, it's no longer neutral anymore. It's charged. All right. It's a charged situation where it can reestablish and go into a lower energy system. Well, this is what has to happen to Esau, is that there has to be a pull of itself. The head, the intellect, the one that repents, has to be pulled away from the body that's animalistic. Now, what does this mean in terms of international affairs? It means that the soul root of Jacob, which is represented with Israel, is going to be battling the soul root of Esau, which is representative of Iran. And Ishmael is going to align itself with Jacob, because Ishmael is aligning itself with Isaac. Remember Isaac, you know, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, all right? Ishmael was the brother of Isaac. He's going to align himself with his nephew, all right, which is Jacob. So that's what's really going on. Now you can, like, you know, pretend you know that you understand international policy and this is, you know, and then demonize Israel and blah blah blah. But the reality of the situation is this: Esau cannot have a nuclear weapon. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And the decapitation of the Ayatollah is the only solution to this. Not a solution, the only solution. Now let's listen to Dr. Bremer. Dr. Ian Bremer.
Jungle, where the strong do whatever they want and the weak suffer what they must. And in the context of the Middle East, the Israelis are strong. And they can call the shots against the Palestinians, and people will complain, but no one will really do anything. They can call the shots against Hezbollah, same. And they can call the shots against Iran. And
the reason why they're getting stronger is because the long fib sequence, the lower frequency fib sequence, is over time, year after year, is gaining strength for Jacob, not Esau. The short, you know, the high frequency one ebbs and flows every 6 months. All right. But every time that there is an alignment, every 6 months, see what has happened for the last 250 years, roughly. Jacob has been growing stronger, but there's an ebb and flow. Every 6 months, it has strength, and then that's for Jacob, and then Esau will gain strength. But over a 250-year arc, there has been an increase in the strength of Jacob. That also coincides with the rising of the United States. And that's the reason why I keep on saying the United States is aligned with Jacob, not Esau. But the thing is that the overall long-term trajectory of Jacob is strength, while the overall long-term trajectory of Esau is weakening. But there's still this ebb and flow that takes place at a high frequency every year. Okay, let's go back to Dr. Bremer.
The Americans have been very supportive in the aftermath, in the first hours. So too the French, so too the Germans. The Gulf states have been critical. Russia has been critical. It'll be interesting to see if anything's going to happen. I think
you know what's also critical? The Zohar that was written 2,000 years ago, or depending on it, 2,000 years ago to 1,300 years ago. Depending on your interpretation of who was the original author. The oil market, this is from Bloomberg. This is breaking news 8 minutes ago. The oil market is bracing for a further price rally after Israel strikes Iran energy assets.
Place that you could see some real direct response from a third party is Turkey, because Erdogan, who's never had a good relationship with Netanyahu, and of course has been on the other side of Gaza and the humanitarian challenges and all the rest, could easily decide to put significant sanctions, boycott, the rest on business with Israel that would have an impact on the Israeli economy. But that's about all I see from third parties. I don't see the UAE cutting off relations with Israel. I see Gulf states only wanting more cooperation with Israel's incredible military and intelligence prowess. So that's the near term. Now, what is Iran going to do here? And it seems to me that there are three bad scenarios that are plausible and certainly much more likely in the near term than they were 24 hours ago. The first is that Iran tries to make a dash for nuclear weapons. I mean, the Israelis were involved in these strikes by themselves. As of right now, there have been no Israeli attacks on Fordo, which is this major nuclear enrichment and research site, infrastructure site. It is deep underground under a mountain. The Israelis don't have the military capabilities to hit it themselves. The Americans have not provided those capabilities. And if the Iranians wanted to take their highly enriched uranium and nuclearize, they could do so within a matter of weeks, 8, 10, 12 weeks. Doesn't give them a nuclear bomb that they can deliver, but does make them more dangerous. Now, if they were to do that out of desperation, the Israelis and the Americans would likely find out, and the likelihood that the Americans would get directly involved in the war and expand it is almost certain in that environment. So a really bad scenario for Iran and very escalatory. That's one possibility, out of desperation. Another, out of desperation, would be to disrupt the streets of Hormuz, where so much of the world's energy, not to mention chemicals and other shipping, comes through. If that were to happen, oil prices for a period of time probably double, 120, 140, 150 or more. That's also essentially a declaration of war against the Gulf states. It's one of the reasons the Gulf states have publicly come out against these attacks and supporting Iran. But again, if they do that, that brings the Americans into the war. It brings the Gulf states into the war. It cuts off all of Iran's funding and their economy, really destabilizes them. So it's something you only do out of desperation. Now, they're clearly going to be far more desperate. And so that makes it more likely than it has been. Let's hope it doesn't happen. That would bring the world into a global recession. And then the other thing that could happen is, with Iran showing itself to be so desperately incompetent, the potential for major social unrest in Iran is also going up. But Iran has far more military capabilities, a better fed, a better armed, a better paid domestic repressive mechanism than Bashar Assad has had. And so if that were to occur, the most likely outcome would be brutal repression that would keep the regime for now intact and would lead to the deaths of thousands and thousands of Iranian civilians. So pretty lousy outcomes. Fortunately, all of those are tail risks. They're things that are more likely now, escalation much more likely now, but not super likely. And there's virtually nothing Iran can do against Israel. Yes, they're going to launch ballistic missiles. They've already launched drones, and the vast majority of them will get knocked down. And so Israel certainly is vulnerable to some attacks that'll be fairly indiscriminate and may well kill Israeli civilians, but nowhere near the level of damage that Israel can and has done to Iran. And that's one of the reasons, the principal reason why Netanyahu felt like he could get away with this, the impunity that he is presently facing. And so if there's a good scenario, and I think there is a baseline good scenario, it's that not much happens. Oil prices spiked on the strikes, but have already come back a fair bit because that's what the markets clearly expect right now. In other words, Iran is like Hezbollah here. that they really don't have any good options, and so they don't do much at all. They make some strikes, but they don't really matter. It's closer to the non-response after, in the Trump's first administration, he ordered the assassination of Qasem Soleimani, and Iran was all fire and brimstone, but couldn't do anything. And that means they get weaker over time, and they're less capable of promoting terrorism and exporting it, and they're less capable of terrorizing their neighbors. And maybe over time, they're less capable of brutally repressing their own people. That's certainly what we have to hope for in this environment. It's very fluid, lots going on, and that's where we are. So I hope everyone's doing well. We'll keep following this very closely. I'll talk to you all.
All right. So my morning show, I do live trading with the markets, and we cover the news as it's happening. It's usually a 4-hour show, so a lot happens in that 4 hours. Now, what I have noticed pre-Israel strike was that oil was trading at approximately, or in a range between about a 61 handle to about a 63 handle. And so, you long it at 61 and you short it at 63, and you just bounce around, right? Now, when Israel made their strike, then oil really took off. There was before that strike, there was about a resistance level at about 65, and it blasts through the 65 resistance level. It went as high as about 78 in that first night of attacks. And then it came down and it closed at about 73. All right. My take is they still continue to short oil, even if it does spike, and just short it. All right. And we'll cover this live on Monday. All right. Now, the question is, will there be a new trading range? I think the new trading range is around 65 for a support level and 68.50 at a resistance level. Now, with this hitting of the gas field by the Israelis, we may have another price shock that's going to test the 78. So it might go up to 73 and then go up to 78 and then come back down. But there is these things with the markets that initial news, there's a big spike in risk, and then it comes back down. And then further, even if it's escalating, further news seems to be less sensitive to it. And therefore, the price movements start to become more manageable. So I suspect that the wave that happened over the weekend is going to be less of a price move than what we saw originally on Thursday night. All right. So I don't expect this thing to go to, in the 80s or 90s or 100s. Some analysts were saying $100 a barrel. I don't believe that. I think fair value is around 65 to about 68.50, somewhere in there. It may stay, at the high range of that, maybe be at 70 or 69 for a while and then drop down. But that's what I think is going to happen. I think the market is going to get a bit desensitized by this action, unless something major happens, like the blocking of the Strait of Hormuz. That would spike oil prices, but that would escalate the United States in. Then you may be seeing $80 in the 80 handle, maybe $85 a barrel, but then it will come back down. So if that's going to happen, then those are the times where you want to buy, not buy a short position. You want to go, okay, yeah, that there was a spike, but then it's going to be coming back down. You might have to hold it for a little while, but then you're going to make your money on the way down on the price. So that's my take on it. All right, but we have to see what happens during the Asian session, and what's going to be happening with equities. If equities continue to go up, then chances are oil is probably going to go down. So I want to play an oil analyst. And see what he has to say here. Now, he did 2 videos. Both of them I have not seen. One was 2 days ago, and one was just 18 hours ago. So let's play the one that was 18 hours ago. But
Hey everybody, I'm sure you've seen the news already.
Before we do that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the probiotic. Probiotics are a foundational part of your supplementation protocol. I have it in a veggie cap form or in a powdered form. I prefer to take the powdered form, but it's up to you. But either one is very high quality, and by taking a probiotic, you're going to improve your skin, your hair, your nails. You're also going to improve the health of your gut biome. You're going to be able to absorb nutrients better. You're going to be able to have a better metabolism. You're going to improve your gut biome and bring down that inflammation, improve that immune system in the gut, improve the mucosal lining of the gut, protect your gut lining. That's really important. Improve the communication between your gut and your liver and your gut and your brain. You'll be able to sleep better. You'll have better mental acuity. So please go to my store and get the probiotic. It's extremely important to take every day. And it's a foundational piece. It's great to stack it with the multivitamin and start with that and then add to it. Add to some of these other supplements that I tell you to get healthy. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. And if you purchase $150 or more, you get a free gift. Oh wait.
Israel launching a surprise attack.
I have to, one more product. Please go to my store and get the collagen. This collagen is dual purpose. It's going to help with your skin, your hair, your nails. Stacks really well with the probiotic. And also, by doing resistance training, you're going to help with your musculature, your joints, your cartilage, and your bones. So please go to my store, take this powdered collagen. You get a big scooper. This is a month's supply. Mix it with soft foods, with filtered water, milk, or even a smoothie. It's up to you how you take it. It has a very comprehensive amino acid profile. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the collagen.
Iran kicking missiles back into Israel, all sorts of mayhem and chaos going on. It's all over the place on YouTube, but we're the only channel talking about it from an oil perspective. So please join me as we go through what happened this week.
No, you're not. Actually, I do it for 4 hours every day on my morning show.
Oil, and I tried to explain what the impacts are for this first round of hostilities between Israel and Iran for the global oil market. So let's get into it. Hey, I'm Aaron with 30 years of experience in oil trading and analytics, and I'm here to elevate your understanding of the oil markets. And again, we're going to go through this presentation. I'm going to try to keep things somewhat short, just to try to get through a lot of things. If you go to our website, theoilbalance.com, you'll see a button that says add me to your distribution list, and I'll put you on that distribution list, and with a presentation that goes into much more detail than what we're able to cover here in hopefully a short amount of time. So with that said, let's kick off the presentation here. All right, so of course, we had a huge rally in prices this week. I like to look at the weekly chart, as you can see here. Previously, I had placed on here a Fibonacci retracement, as it looked like we were bouncing back to this first retracement level a couple weeks ago. So I threw this on here just to give us some guidelines about what we might expect in the upcoming weeks. Well, this past week, we were doing pretty well to get to the 61.8% retracement level. But of course, with the news coming out Thursday night of the attack,
and Friday the market really rallied. On Thursday overnight, the front month WTI got all the way up almost to $78, 77.62, which was pretty close to giving us 100% retracement on that weekly Fibonacci, again, as identified here. What's interesting
Now,
though
what
is
I've
we
been
settled on
saying,
Friday
when I've
very
been
close.
saying before the actual strike, that I've been trading between that 61 handle and that 63, 64 handle. And there was a resistance before the strike. There was a resistance at 65, and then there was the next resistance was 68.50. All right. And the big news in the oil market was what was going to happen with OPEC Plus by bringing in new barrels of oil of about 411,000 per month over month increase in production. Now, Israel strikes and totally blows out those resistance levels. Now the question is, what is the true resistance level? Now, if you look out in the weekly chart, there's the overall trend going all the way back to, I think it was 2024 with the high point. The overall trend is moving down, and it's at the very top of that actual channel at 74. All right. So chances are it's going to come back into that trading range, because that's where the fundamentals are. I'm not, I don't think that this is going to last for much longer. It may last for another 3 days or so, but then it's going to precipitously go down. I mean, having that whisker, these are whisker candles. I don't know if you can see it, but you have a candle on the whiskers of the candle. When you have long whiskers, that's not necessarily a good sign, right? Usually, long whiskers and then it comes back down and closes. It's losing energy. It can't keep it up, and therefore it's probably going to come back down. All right, let's listen to what he has to say. But I personally think that this thing's going to come back down to a fair bet, probably trade no longer in that 61 to 64 handle. It's going to be a 65 handle to a 68 handle.
The 61.8 retracement number, which would indicate to me anyway that Fibonacci's been sort of fully retraced. From here, now we're off to the next thing. We're off to something new at this point. Volume was very good. This is a chart over here of volume for the entire WTI curve. So we're not anywhere looking at just the front month, at least from volume and open interest perspective. Volume on Friday was almost twice as what it was on Thursday. And you can see it's really high versus anything else. Previously, the high was around April 2nd when Trump came out with the first plans for tariffs and that sort of thing, and the market really took off. But you can see how volume on Friday really dwarfed the Trump tariff volume pop from an oil trading perspective. Much of the strength in the market was coming off of the very front end, which is not a surprise. That's sort of how
you got to remember
liquidity is.
I lost it. I apologize for that.
Hey everybody.
Let me just
61.8 retrace.
Okay. When he was saying that there was a new, with that whole full retracement, and there's a new change in the dynamics. I think that part of that new change in dynamics is that now you have a new trading level that is not the pre-COVID trading level that we were looking at, but now it's elevated up, and it's at the $65 to $68 range. I don't think it's going to stay more than that. Now this volume, he was stating that, well, we had high volume during the issue about trade, and oil went down, not up. And then lots of future contracts going up. Now the reason why the future contracts are going up is, one, they want to lock in just in case oil gets at $90 a barrel and they want to buy in at 70. Also, you had lots of shorts going on. So let's say that you're not going to deliver oil, and you're just doing cash. You're just a cash market. All right. You buy, let's say you sell you sell futures. All right. And you're thinking that the oil is going to go down. So let's say you're selling futures at 65 at that retracement level, or maybe 66. All right. And you don't think that it's going to go above that. Well, you sell a futures contract. Someone that thinks it's going to go up above 65 or 66 or whatever, they're going to buy the futures contract because they think that they locked in at 65 or 66 and they think it's going to go up. You think it's going to go down. Well, the ones that sold these futures contracts are afraid now because the way they make their money is they sell high and buy low. All right. They sell it at 60. The way they would make money if it played out the way they thought, sell it at 65, the futures contract. Someone buys it. The one that's selling it thinks it's going to go lower, and they close out the position before it expires by buying a futures contract to close the contract out. So they buy it at they sell it at 65, and let's say they buy it at 60. Well, they made a $5 profit per share, per contract, all right, that they sold. If the oil went up, the ones that were selling future contracts, so let's say they sold it at 65 and it went to 70, all right, these guys are $5 in the hole per contract when they go and close out their position because they're not going to deliver the oil. So they had to cover their short position. So when they're buying the contracts, it jacks up the volume. So the question is what's the true volume? The ones that really need to lock in at the cheaper barrel in worries that it's going to go up higher, or they really short covering the futures market? I think majority of that volume there was covering for shorts. And that's why I don't think that there's going to be that much volume driving up oil that much higher, because the ones that were shorting are already out of the market. Now, what I'm doing is what I'm doing is that I am shorting oil, because I think what's going to happen is over time, this thing is that there's going to be a volatility decay in the price of oil, and I'm going to play that volatility decay.
Of volume for the entire WTI curve, so we're not anywhere looking at just the front month, at least from volume and open interest perspective. Volume on Friday was almost twice as what it was on Thursday, and you can see it's really high versus anything
I think
else.
it was a short
Previously, the
cover.
high was around April 2nd when Trump came out with the first plans for tariffs and that sort of thing in the market.
So the volume, so the ones that were trying to short, which is what I was doing, the ones that were trying to short when the tariffs came, all right, they would have volume for contracts, for WTI contracts went up, but that's because of the tariffs shorting the market, shorting oil. And then what I was doing, I was playing that cycle. Buy at 61, sell at 63. Buy at 61, sell at 63.
Off, but you can see how volume on Friday really dwarfed the Trump tariff volume pop from
I'm playing the volatility decay.
Much of the strength in the market was coming off of the very front end, which is not a surprise. That's sort of how it happens. That's where liquidity is. But that caused the spreads to really blow out. And so we're seeing this sort of parabolic nature here on the front spreads again. I've been talking about that lately. If you're on the distribution list and you're one of our subscribers from the Oil Balance, you would have seen, us talking about this in more detail and sort of what that means. Basically, to quickly break it down, I think there's sort of a wartime setting, a mode that the market can go into, and then just the normal sort of seasonal mode. The point being that these summer spreads, especially in TI, especially when Cushing inventories are low, they tend to follow a linear pattern in terms of price versus utilization. When you get into this war mode like we saw in 21 and 22 with Russia going into Ukraine, the market likes to price in these parabolic shapes where it just can go crazy. And again, so that's what we're starting to see here, it's probably appropriate just from the uncertainty standpoint at this point. But we're not at the point where we're taking oil off the market at this point, but obviously that's where it can get to, and we'll talk about that here in a second. The other thing I want to get to real quick is we've been talking a lot about US producers and sort of what their signals are to go. Just really, again, really roughly, rule of thumb, if we're $70 or above, that typically means in the front month, that typically means production's back on, they can be growing. Of course, we're just one day into it, so I'm not suggesting that gets triggered right now. But what was really interesting,
when the production goes up, the price will go down.
That the market, the Cal 26, and again, this is a Midland, and I'll go more into that again on the subscription side of things. I can go more into that. But if you just look at the shapes of the curve, so back here at the end of May, the Cal 26 curve, so the value, if you want to take the entire value for 2026, which is something a producer would be interested in hedging, that market was in contango, so you can see the front end is cheaper than the back end. That started to flatten out as the month went on, as the month of June went on. By the 11th, we were starting to get into a little bit of backwardation here in the very front, and then with Friday on the 13th here, trying to price in everything going on in the Middle East, we really saw quite a bit of backwardation come in, even all the way back in Cal 26. So another way you can interpret that is if you had a lot of selling pressure on the back end of the curve here, because the further you go out from front month, the further in time you try to trade your futures, the less volume there is to actually do anything, the less interest people have in trading with you. So it's easier to push the market around on volumes, especially if you're a hedger and you're trying to do sort of appropriate volumes in the market. You have to be sort of careful that you don't end up just completely crushing that part of the market, or at least while you're trying to get those hedge trades on. So at any rate, from conversations I had with folks in the market, and then again, just from looking at how they settled things, certainly seems like there was a bit of hedging going on in Cal 26. Again, I'm picking Midland here, so it doesn't necessarily have to be that Midland flat price. But the point is, across Cal 26, it seems to me like towards the end of the week, this week, we probably got some decent hedging going on as the market comes back up to prices that are more suitable to locking in for the producers and giving them some downside protection going forward. This chart on the right-hand side here is just the value of the average number for Cal 26 over time. So you can see it really did pop up quite a bit there on Friday. In terms of crude demand, just in the US, refining demand hit a new high for the 5-year range anyway. I know back in like 2019, we would have been at a higher rate. But for the 5-year range from 2020 to 2024, we hit a new high at 17.2 million barrels per day. According to my math, that should be about max. We should be pretty close to sort of what I would consider close to a maximum number. There's a bunch of other asphalt refineries and stuff that could fly around and maybe bump us a little bit higher. But so it seems like we're going pretty close to full tilt on the refinery front. Again, most of that came from Pad 2 and Pad 3. You'll not be surprised to hear. Exports, though, kind of grinding a little bit lower. So what I'm trying to point out is from a domestic demand, we're probably pegged out in terms of that domestic demand. The export demand, though, we still have some room. In theory, we can probably get up to 7 million barrels per day. That might be a little bit of a stretch. Probably, easily we've been at 5 before. Somewhere above that, 6 or 7 million barrels per day, you'd have to have the stars sort of lining up. You'd have to have all your ships coming in at a very orderly fashion and getting on the dock and off the dock very quickly and that sort of thing. But for a sustained 7 million barrels per day. But the point is, there is more export capacity, especially for what we've been doing. And of course, I bring that up because everyone's talking about the Strait of Hormuz, given the recent hostilities between Israel and Iran. So in several other episodes that we've put out, and I can put links to those here above my head somewhere, we talked about the Strait of Hormuz as obviously it's a, you know this, it's a key choke point for the international oil market. So 70% of OPEC exports, not OPEC plus, but the OPEC, the core OPEC members, 70% of their exports go through this tiny little Strait of Hormuz. We're talking around 16 million barrels per day or so in May. Most of that, the majority of those exports end up going to India and China, Far East. And not too much of that comes back to the Western countries of US and Europe. So if someone were to shut the Strait of Hormuz, it's a huge problem for Asia. And again, that's sort of 50% of Asia's total liquid demand, the 16 million barrels per day. So it's just a huge, would be a huge impact to the Asian market. So the way we've been talking about this previously, the Strait of Hormuz issue, is would Iran, you know, the current leadership in Iran, would they shut the Strait of Hormuz? From my perspective, the answer is no, because the blowback on that would be too great for them. They'd be isolating their friends and only encouraging their enemies, so to speak, to get everything back open. There are obviously a couple other things that could happen. You could see, you know, other hostile nations trying to close it as some sort of false flag event. Again, it wouldn't be difficult to close the Strait of Hormuz. You'd probably have to be some sort of government-sponsored agency to be able to pull that off. But just sinking a large enough ship or a couple large enough ships right in this tiny little passage would really create a huge choke point. So again, we've been talking about that previously in terms of would the leadership of Iran want to do that? Maybe we should sort of widen out that lens a little bit and say, you know, is there some actor on the world stage that might want to close that to make things worse for Iran? Yes, I don't want to go into, you know, who that might be per se, but so yes, from that perspective, the odds of a Hormuz closure goes up pretty quickly. That being said, we've got a lot of powerful countries that would want to open that back up again. So obviously China would be interested in getting any closure of the Strait of Hormuz cleaned up. Saudi Arabia would be pretty quick to want to get that picked up. All these, you know, countries along the Persian Gulf here would be pretty quick to try to work together, I would imagine, to get that back opened. So that would mean you would need secure airspace and whatnot to be able to do that, especially depending on the nature of the closure and how that came about and that sort of thing. But so
Right.
Again, just to kind of
if that Strait of Hormuz gets blocked because of the war, then you're talking about escalated oil prices. But that's not going to last for very long because the United States is going to get involved, and every single ship that the Iranians have will be decimated by the U.S. Navy. I mean, if that did happen,
I don't think
if that did
Iran would
happen,
do it.
I think the best thing to do is continue to short oil. Just keep on shorting oil, and then it's going to come down. You just got to weed it out.
Themselves, at least at this point. Maybe if it was some sort of last-ditch effort and they knew that the leadership of Iran was about to collapse, maybe they try something like that. If some other foreign country wants to try to do some sort of false flag, if you will, and make it look like Iran's done that, that could be a possibility as well. But it would be absolutely devastating for the Asian markets. That being said, it looks like China is just sitting on absolute groundswell of SPR crude. Well, I shouldn't say just SPR, but the total crude inventories, including SPR, is really quite high. So China, you know, would be somewhat well positioned for that. The rest of Asia, really not so much, as they live much more hand to mouth for these sorts of things. So again, China's pretty good about buying for their SPR when prices are low. Historically, they've been pretty proactive about that. And I think this latest episode of low prices before this week, maybe even before last week, definitely gave them that opportunity to start adding inventory. And maybe they were reading things in the tea leaves just on the geopolitical front too that helped them with that assessment. To sort of bring it back to the US markets though here real quick, heating oil futures have taken the lead here as of Friday as the most valuable product in a dollars per barrel standpoint. But here's a stack of all sort of the, mostly from a Gulf Coast perspective, the prices were tracking within the oil market. Gasoline did not do a good job of keeping up with this move, as you can see here on the heat to gas spread on Friday, just really widening out. Depending what happens, that could be a really good buy, by the way, for traders out there. On the shipping side of things, it all looks pretty active from an LA perspective. We're seeing a bit of a week-on-week increase for week 24. So we've gone from 90.2 the previous week to 94 this week, and we've got a nice bump up on week 25 as we go from 114 up to 122. Of course, we'll take this last number with a little grain of salt, but things are looking better for the time being, at least just for the Port of LA. I'm hearing Port of Houston has been kind of slow though.
So basically what he's saying is the trade deficit tariffs aren't really affecting that much of the flow of goods to the port.
Sort of the oil shipments, oil and natural gas shipments, Port of Houston's actually looking a little bit slow. Then from a retail price perspective, this week we saw gasoline down about 2 cents per gallon, and we saw diesel up about 2 cents per gallon. But just to kind of, here's a summary too of sort of what we were talking about. But to get back to the Iranian situation, we are hearing reports now that the South Pars system has been hit by the Israelis. So South Pars is a primarily natural gas formation in the southern part of Iran. And I think that's where things start to get interesting. It's one thing if the two parties are just slugging it out, hitting military targets or trying to take out military targets. It sort of becomes a different animal from an oil perspective. If the Israel and their allies start targeting the oil production centers in Iran, that becomes more of a big deal. So just again, to put it, to give you some parameters, Iran, from a crude perspective, produces about 3 million barrels per day. Their exports have been relatively high lately in the 1.5, 1.6 million barrels per day level, again, from the petrologistics data that we're able to get. So that's sort of an uptick from 1 million barrels per day earlier in the year. So there's a decent amount of oil that would be potentially shut in if Israel started targeting oil infrastructure, especially the loading terminals that Iran has, which you would think would be pretty easy targets. Everyone knows where those are, is I guess why I'm saying that's easy. Maybe they're defended, I don't know, but those would probably be pretty easy to hit, at least because everybody knows where those are. The other thing, again, like we covered with the Strait of Hormuz, if something were to happen there, that's an absolutely huge deal. US SPR. So again, what I was thinking with the, if I go back here real quick. Yeah, so I go back here with the export program. There is room for the exports to increase if that's what needs to happen. If Hormuz was shut down for whatever reason, we could export. We could, maybe double our exports. We did 3.3 million barrels per day this week. Maybe we could double that for a short amount of time. U.S. inventories are pretty low on the crude oil side in terms of SPR. We're at about 56% of total utilization or of working capacity. This time last year we were at like 52%. So we have made some small gains in replacing that oil, but again, we're sort of at 56%. We're not full. So keep that in mind. So that's where things from a pricing perspective would get really interesting. Again, keep your eye on Brent Dubai, keep your eye on the Brent market, as those are maybe more related to the international.
So the
markets
international oil markets are going to be the Brent. But what I'm noticing is the spread between Brent and WTI is narrowing. Normally it's $2 to $3 a barrel. It's usually $3. But the thing is it was at 1, or maybe it's just slightly above 1. That doesn't make much sense. So it looked like actually WTI went up faster than Brent. So no one's talking about this, but I'm sure that Trump calls MBS and says, hey, we got an issue with Iran. You got to help us with the oil price. And most likely MBS would lower the oil price if we need it. Therefore, it's another reason to short oil.
WTI based in Cushing is, but they're all sort of getting more related and closer together. So again, if you like this kind of stuff, like and subscribe to this video. Please go to our website, theoilbalance.com, and click on that button that says add me to your distribution list. And I'll send you a much more detailed presentation.
All right, so that's my take on the oil markets. We're going to continue on with other news. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the cleanse or the Max 14. This is the first pillar of my core protocol. It helps to boost up the immune system. Take a teaspoon a day, swish it in your mouth, gargle 20, 30 seconds, and then swallow. What that's going to do is improve the epithelial lining of your oral cavity and your oral pharynx. It'll also help the mucosal barrier. And by doing that, you're improving your immune system. Take a teaspoon a day, every day. I've been doing this for over 5 years, every day. If you're not feeling well, take a tablespoon or 2. Also, reduce the load on your pancreas by taking digestive enzyme complex. If you're 40 years of age or older, you should be taking digestive enzyme complex to break up your carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids. It reduces the load on the pancreas, and you're able to absorb your nutrients better. Less load on your digestive system. And if you're an athlete, you'd benefit from this also, because it'll help you break up your pre or your post-workout fueling. And so you'll be able to break up those proteins and carbohydrates and lipids. So please go to my store and get the digestive enzyme complex. Digestive enzyme complex also has bromelain in it. Helps to break up clots. Bromelain is fibrinolytic, very important. And digestive enzyme complex has proteolytic enzymes, very important to break up glycoproteins. And we know about glycoproteins, right? We all know about that from 2020. Also, please go to my store and get the Clarity Factor. Clarity Factor is a great way to get rid of brain fog so you can concentrate on the tasks at work or at school, or even if you're retired. Learn new things and build that positive neuroplasticity. Take Clarity Factor, make sure you drink it with filtered water, take it every day. And what you're going to notice is that your memory is improving, you're thinking faster. And when you apply a holistic approach, what's going to happen is that you're actually going to improve your brain function by doing the 4 modalities of exercise, doing cardiovascular exercise, doing resistance training, stretching and balancing. Those activate different neurons. Doing cardio, people would say, how is cardio activating neurons? Well, actually, cardio, because you're moving, it's helping with your kinematics. But not just that, it's helping your baroreceptors, and you're getting better blood flow in building a better microenvironment for the neuroplasticity to allow for those neurons to develop those neural networks. Very important. So proper exercise, proper diets, drink filtered water, stay away from processed foods, stay away from sugary foods, because that causes problems with your neurons. And having some sort of spirituality or meditative practice will help to calm your system down. So it's very important to apply a holistic approach and take Clarity Factor. Again, Clarity Factor gets rid of that brain fog, and it improves your memory and helps you think faster. So please go to my store, improve your brain function, improve your pancreatic health, and improve your immune system. All right, so that's a great stack right there. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
Do you need to sell your house and fast? Because this girl wants to buy it lightning fast. I buy houses for cash so that you don't need a realtor. Welcome to the new era of
Still, all right, let's listen to Times Radio.
He's not trusted and he's not liked by Israelis. And if civilians keep dying every single day for an indefinite period, because Netanyahu has not in any way expressed what the end game is here.
Right.
And if he can't deliver, he could find himself disappointed by the reaction.
The extent of the damage in Iran is not yet clear, and Iranian officials have not yet released an update death toll from Israel's latest strikes. Israel's airspace remains closed for a third day, and the UK Foreign Office has advised against all travel to the country. Noga Tarnopolsky is an Israeli-Palestinian journalist based in Jerusalem, and she joins us now. Noga, good afternoon.
Hello. Hi, Alexis.
Noga, good to ask you. We speak every weekend. How are you? What is the scene on the ground at the moment?
Well, I personally am quite tired after 3 nights of very little sleep. The senior, I was able to get out a bit today, and you know, there's some cafes open, but just for takeout. There are 1 or 2 cafes open more normally, but for briefer hours. But basically, other than, you know, those of us who insist on just being able to sit down and have a coffee on a sidewalk somewhere, it's very, very quiet. And Israel has been, again, completely isolated from the world. There are no flights in, no flights out. Schools have been shut down. The assumption is that school will not resume before the beginning of next school year. People are not going to work. It's a very extreme deviation from what was already a fairly difficult war routine, but had become a routine.
We've just been seeing videos of both the Prime Minister and some of his ministers, the Security Minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, walking through the neighborhood in Bat Yam, where we've seen that huge missile strike that took down a 10-story building. There seems to be a lot of crowds gathering, a lot of chanting of the Prime Minister's name when he was doing the walkthrough. What is the response of the Israeli people for these strikes? Are they hugely supportive of the missile strikes in Iran?
It's a very complicated question that you just asked me. And the first response is, I don't know. There haven't been any polls in the 50 or so hours since this started. It was a weekend and it was unexpected. Netanyahu, as you know, is a very unpopular prime minister. And I have no question at all that one of his hopes for this operation is that it would burnish again his ruined credentials as Israel's Mr. Security after, the disaster of October 7th. It was interesting for me to see him walking through Bat Yam, relatively unwealthy kind of satellite city adjacent to Tel Aviv. There were, I don't know about crowds, there were a few dozen people around him, and they were, chanting Bibi, King of Israel. It's a Netanyahu stronghold there. I have to tell you that in Jerusalem, which is another Netanyahu stronghold, I went to the grocery store to just stock up a little bit. And there was a gentleman in the line for the cashier next to me who made a comment. He said, "Oh, thank God we have Bibi looking out for us." I don't know how representative this is. I can only share with you my sense. My sense is that Israelis are exhausted, worn out, and that Netanyahu has again made a promise he won't be able to keep, right? Unless a wager he seems to have made comes out, which we can discuss in a minute. Netanyahu promised Israelis a very clear thing with this Iran attack, and it is that he will eliminate the nuclear threat from Iran, full stop. For Israelis, that's a very persuasive argument, as we see that it is, by the way, for many Western leaders, for Keir Starmer, for Emmanuel Macron. If the threat of a nuclear Iran is abstract for many people, for these leaders it's not, and for Israelis it's been a presence in their lives for several decades, with Iranian leaders routinely screaming that Israel needs to be wiped off the face of the earth. So I expect that at that level, Israelis support this. I think that the UN nuclear watchdog report that happened to come out on Thursday, just before this strike, also helped Israelis understand the danger, the real danger Iran poses. That said, Iran until this point was not disrupting daily life in Israel. And now you're seeing civilians die every single day. And at the same time, soldiers are still dying in Gaza. It's just Israelis get to pay less attention to it because the Iran war is so now blanketing the news sphere here. So my best guess, my honest assessment for you, is that Netanyahu does not have a huge margin of action here in terms of his popularity among Israelis. He's not trusted and he's not liked by Israelis. And if civilians keep dying every single day for an indefinite period, because Netanyahu has not in any way expressed what the end game is here,
Right.
and if he can't deliver, he could find himself disappointed by the reaction.
Is there a sense, Noga, that Israel is being left to carry out this disarming, if you like, of...
What's the secret to building wealth? Well, people think it's about staring at trading charts for 12 hours a day, or jumping from one hot investment to another, or trying to time the perfect market entry. And
disarming, if you like, of Iran and their nuclear capabilities pretty much on their own. We've heard from European leaders, foreign leaders, they've all been asking for a de-escalation. But we all know that for many leaders, this idea of Iran being able to achieve nuclear weapon capability is a major concern. And they seem all too happy to just let Israel get on with doing what some might call the dirty work in Iran. Is there a feeling of the international community abandoning Israel at this point?
I don't think there's a feeling of the international community abandoning Israel in this respect, because the statements, as you just said, have been quite nuanced. There are calls for de-escalation, but they all express support for the genuine danger posed by nuclear Iran. And I do think, again, that these leaders are very well aware of what that means. I think that Israelis have felt very confused by the growing diplomatic isolation regarding Gaza. So that came before this.
Yeah.
And again, I just want to return. I think Israelis, after 20 months of war, are exhausted. And, you know, yesterday there's a political satirist who I follow, who yesterday made what I consider a very non-satirical comment. And he said, this may end up being the first war in which an entire nation dies of simple exhaustion. And I think that that reflects the vibe here. But again, I think that Netanyahu is taking certain risks. We've seen him, within a matter of hours, move away from just targeting military and nuclear targets to also including national infrastructure in Iran. And I don't know if he's going to have the support of other world leaders for that. And I'm not sure that he has made those inquiries.
No, as ever, thank you for giving us your time. Always good to speak to you. Stay safe, and we'll look forward to speaking to you.
All right, let's listen to maybe Fox News. But before we do that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the lozenges and the drops. Use them year-round. You never know when you need them. Have some at work, have some at home, no matter what the season is. I have elderberry zinc in stock. You get 21 in each bag. The lozenges are larger than the drops. Get a few bags for your household. Very high quality. Use them right when you have that irritation. I also have the drops that are smaller. You get 100 in each bag. You can get it in blueberry, in honey and lemon, and also in cherry. Get a few bags for your household and for work. Use them right away, right when you have that irritation. Very important. I also have olive leaf extract. Olive leaf extract is a dual purpose supplement. It helps with your immune system and your cardiovascular health. Olive leaf extract brings down inflammation, and by bringing down inflammation, you're helping your immune system, and by bringing down inflammation at the vascular level, you're reducing plaque formation. Olive leaf extract also helps to control your lipid profile. The lipid profile that needs to be controlled is you're bringing down LDL and increasing your HDL levels. When you have less LDL, you have less LDL that's oxidized, and oxidized LDL is what is eaten up by macrophages that creates plaque. So if you have less LDL oxidation, then you have less plaque formation. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the olive leaf extract. Take it every day. Drink it with filtered water. And taking supplements that have dual purpose are super important. Vitamin C with magnesium. This helps with your skin, your immune system, and your brain function. Magnesium is super important for brain function. Also, magnesium increases the efficacy of D3. And magnesium and zinc helps with brain function and immune system. Take them together. And a great stack would be you're helping with your immune system and brain function and your skin, and taking the olive leaf extract and you're helping your immune system and your cardiovascular. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, use discount 5, get the magnesium and zinc, the vitamin C and magnesium and the olive leaf extract. It's a great stack. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order, and if you spend $150 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right, let's see. Let's see if this. Fox News has too much about the parade, and I really don't want to cover the parade issue. I'm more focused on what's going on with Iran. All right, let's go to this one. This was published 58 minutes ago.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Washington for a special edition of Special Report. I'm Brett Baird. Coming up in a few minutes, my world exclusive live interview with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the first since the Israeli strikes on Iran began. But first, this afternoon, Fox News alert: the growing conflict in the Middle East. Israel launching a third day of airstrikes across Iran. Israeli officials advising Iranians to evacuate arms factories and threatening to use even greater force. Iran saying 128 people have been killed, 900 wounded so far. The Islamic Republic responding with missile attacks of its own, which have killed 13 people, wounding more than 360. Iran's foreign minister saying today his country will stop its attacks if Israel stops theirs. Let's get the latest now from Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Yanks, live in Tel Aviv. Good afternoon, Trey.
Brett, good afternoon. Since the conflict began, Iran has launched more than 250 ballistic missiles into Israel. Overnight, 11 people were killed when some of those missiles slipped past air defense systems, slamming into residential areas. Hundreds more have been wounded. When we arrived at one impact site this morning, rescue crews were combing through the rubble of an apartment building in central Israel, looking for survivors. One man in his 50s, named Meir, was still trapped as his son, who had been wounded in the attack, waited to learn the fate of his father. Right now, rescue workers are digging through the debris following that Iranian ballistic missile attack that targeted central Israel. They're looking for survivors who are trapped under the rubble, including Meir, that father. His son Ofek is off in the distance, still wearing his hospital gown after he was pulled from the blast site. He is hoping for a miracle today following this Iranian attack. Israel is responding to these recent attacks with more airstrikes targeting both military and energy positions inside Iran. Iranian media reports 128 people have been killed and 900 injured. We know among that list are Iranian nuclear scientists and top IRGC commanders targeted by Israel. Iran's foreign minister spoke today about the American support for Israel during the conflict. Now, in conversations with Israeli sources, they are drawing a stark contrast on what is happening here. The Israelis are going after military and nuclear sites. The Iranians are firing ballistic missiles toward Israeli civilians. Brett.
Trey X in Tel Aviv. Trey, thank you. Joining us now, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Mr. Prime Minister, welcome back to Special Report.
Thank you. Good to be with you, Brett.
First of all, let me start at the beginning. Why did you launch this operation now?
Because we were facing an imminent threat, a dual existential threat. One, the threat of Iran rushing to weaponize their enriched uranium to make atomic bombs with a specific and declared intent to destroy us. Second, a rush to increase their ballistic missile arsenal. The capacity that they would have 3,600 weapons a year, new weapons within 3 years, 10,000 ballistic missiles, each one weighing a ton, coming in at Mach 6, right into our cities, as you saw today. And then in 6 years, 20,000. That's no country can sustain that, and certainly not a country the size of Israel. So we had to act. It was the 12th hour. We did act to save ourselves, but also, I think, to not only protect ourselves, but protect the world from this incendiary regime. We can't have the world's most dangerous regime have the world's most dangerous weapons. We're protecting ourselves, but by doing so, we're protecting many others.
You know, I just want to press you on the intel on the nuclear part. Less than 2 months ago, the new director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, testified on Capitol Hill, saying that everything had been suspended since 2003 and had not restarted, that the nuclear program had not been restarted by the Iranians. So did something change from end of March until this week? Was the U.S. intel wrong?
The intel we got and we shared with the United States was absolutely clear. It was absolutely clear that they were working in a secret plan to weaponize the uranium. They were marching very quickly. They would achieve a test device and possibly an initial device within months, and certainly less than a year. That was the intel we shared with the United States. I think we have excellent intel in Iran. I think we've proven that. And that is something that we couldn't possibly accept. Whether it would be 6 months or 12 months or 13 months is immaterial. Once they go that route, it's too late. And we will not have a second Holocaust, a nuclear Holocaust. We already had one in the previous century. The Jewish state is not going to have the Holocaust made it on the Jewish people. It's not going to happen. Never again is now, and we have to act now.
What is the goal of these strikes? You talked early in one of your speeches after the attacks began with a message directly to the Iranian people. Clearly, some of these strikes have targeted Iranian leadership, military, nuclear scientists, and other leaders. So is regime change part of the effort here?
Could certainly be the result because the Iran regime is very weak. I think it's basically left with two things. It's plans to have atomic bombs and ballistic missiles. That's basically what Iran has. They certainly don't have the people. 80% of the people who throw these theological thugs out. I mean, they murder them, they oppress them for 46 years, they yearn for freedom. I mean, they shoot women because their hair is uncovered. They shoot students. They just suck the oxygen from this brave and gifted people, the Iranian people. And you know, the Persian people and the Jewish people have had an ancient friendship. Goes back to the times of Cyrus the Great. That could happen again. But again, the decision to act, to rise up at this time is the decision of the Iranian people. We decided to act because we saw enough uranium, enriched uranium, for 9 bombs. And all they had to do was weaponize them. We stopped that by we're attacking their nuclear sites. We attacked their chief nuclear scientists working, it's like Hitler's nuclear scientists. Would you leave them? Of course not. We attacked their top command. I can inform you, Brett, that moments ago, we also got the chief intelligence officer and his deputy in Tehran, because we're now over the skies of Tehran. Our pilots, our brave pilots, are over the skies of Tehran, and we're targeting military sites, nuclear sites. That's what we're doing to take out those 2 threats. Unlike the Iranians, who your reporter said correctly, they're targeting our civilians. Yeah. They're bombing our civilians. So that's the difference. They're a terrorist regime. We can't have Iran have nuclear weapons. And by the way, our intel shows that they intend to give these nuclear weapons to their Houthi proxies and others. And that's nuclear terrorism on a global scale. It threatens everyone. And the last thing is they have plans to develop intercontinental ballistic missiles. Right now, 8,000 kilometers, very soon, just out a little distance, and they can reach the eastern seaboard of the United States. These people who chant death to America, tried to assassinate President Trump twice, killed 241 of your Marines in Beirut, killed and injured thousands of American soldiers in Afghanistan and Iraq, tried to bomb a restaurant in Washington, D.C., chant death to America, burn the American flag. Do you want these people to have nuclear weapons and the means to deliver them to your cities? Of course not.
Yeah.
So we're defending ourselves, but we're also defending the world.
I want to talk about the nuclear threat. I want to talk about President Trump. You just said Iran tried to assassinate President Trump twice. Do you have intel that the assassination attempts on President Trump were directly from Iran?
Through proxies, yes. Through their intel, yes. They want to kill him. Look, he's enemy number one. He's a decisive leader. He never took the path that others took to try to bargain with them in a way that is weak, giving them basically a pathway to enrich uranium, which means a pathway to the bomb, padding it with billions and billions of dollars. He took up this fake agreement and basically tore it up. He killed Qasem Soleimani. He made it very clear, including now, you cannot have a nuclear weapon, which means you cannot enrich. He's been very forceful. So for them, he's enemy number one.
Yeah.
Look, they also try to kill me, but I'm his junior partner.
When did
They
you
understand that President Trump is a great threat to Iran's plans to weaponize nuclear weapons and use them.
When did you tell President Trump you were going to launch these strikes?
Look, I've been in constant contact with President Trump. We've known each other for many years. And obviously, we informed our American friends and President Trump, our great friend, ahead of time. Now, he did. He knew about it, of course.
I mean, there were reports that President Trump kind of helped you achieve your strategic surprise by publicly urging you not to attack when he already knew you had decided to do it. So you were closely coordinating with the U.S. throughout this process.
Look, we're fully coordinated, but understand that America, under President Trump, will make the decisions that are best for America. And that's the way it is. He understands that I, as the Prime Minister of Israel, the one and only Jewish state, must make the decisions that are important for the survival of my country, and he will do what is best for America. That is a relationship of mutual respect and mutual confidence.
Does Israel have the capacity to strike Iran's nuclear sites deep underground?
Well, we've certainly done quite a bit. We've destroyed the main facility in Natanz. That's the main enrichment facility. And if we need to, we'll add whatever is needed. But yes, we're committed to achieving both goals. And I'm not going to get into all of our objectives. I don't want to get into specific operational plans. But it's our existence. But not only ours. I think it's a wider battle here of civilization against barbarism, of good against bad. I mean, this regime, look at what it's done without nuclear weapons. It's just fomented evil everywhere. I mean, they've pushed international terrorism to the hilt into every part of the Middle East, in Syria, in Iraq, Lebanon, where they had Hezbollah, Hamas, where they encouraged the Houthis, the great massacre of October 7th, the Houthis. That's what they're doing when they don't have nuclear weapons, including attacking American targets. Imagine what they'll do if they had nuclear weapons. And I'm always amazed at people who say they care about America and they don't want a war. They're right. This is a forever war that Iran is doing without nuclear weapons. And imagine what they will do if they have them. I think for the security of Israel, America, the world, we must make sure that they don't have these weapons and the means to deliver them. And they're working on both.
I just want to ask you about the nuclear sites. Fordo nuclear enrichment facility located.
Before we do that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the vitamin B complex. Vitamin B complex is very important to take if you're 40 years of age or older. Vitamin B complex will help with your cellular metabolism. The first 4 B vitamins helps with your mitochondria. That will increase your ATP levels so you have more energy. In addition, vitamin B complex is super important to protect your neurons. Very important. And when you start to get age 40 or older, you need to rev up that metabolism and protect those neurons. And stack it with the omega-3. Omega-3 helps with cardiovascular health. So you're helping with your neurons and cellular metabolism, and you're helping with your cardiovascular health. So omega-3 will help to prevent the red blood cells from sticking too readily. So it's reducing clot formation. And omega-3 will help to bring down LDL levels and help to increase HDL levels. It brings down systemic inflammation. And by doing that, you're reducing the chances of further plaque buildup. So stack the vitamin B complex to help with your neurons and your cellular metabolism with the omega-3, and you're improving your cardiovascular health too at the same time. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and apply the holistic approach. Proper diet, proper exercise, proper sleep, mindfulness. These are all really important things. So please go to my store, use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $150 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last.
Deep inside a mountain, these are from Iranian nuclear experts, inside this mountain cone, Esfahan, deeply buried facility where Iran stores its highly enriched uranium. In some ways, experts say it might even be more important than Fordo. The IAEA says it's a half-mile deep. So I guess the question is, if the goal is destroying Iran's nuclear program, how do you do so without the 30,000-pound bunker buster bombs that really only the U.S. has? Have you asked President Trump to use that 30,000-pound penetrator bomb to get to those facilities?
I'm not going to get into my discussions with the president, but understand that his decisions are his decisions. As for these targets, we've destroyed in Isfahan the conversion facility they have. That's a very important facility that without which you can't really build a weapon. That's gone. There are other plans that we have. I won't get into it. I think Israel has shown that it has, well, how shall I say it? We're the innovation nation, we're called that, startup nation. So we have quite a few startups and quite a few rabbits up our sleeve. And I don't think that I should get into that.
Okay. Well, I mean, are you getting everything from the U.S. that you've asked for? Is there something that you've asked for that you're not getting?
What I'll say this is that I deeply appreciate President Trump's decision to help in the defense of Israel. American pilots are shooting down drones that are headed towards Israel, as do our pilots. American THAAD missile batteries are helping defend Tel Aviv and greater Tel Aviv area. American Aegis ships are in the Mediterranean. That's all a decision by President Trump, which I deeply appreciate. Again, his decisions on what to do at any given time is the president's decision. I trust his judgment completely.
Do you have any estimate on how much you have set back Iran's nuclear program?
I think we've set them back quite a bit. I think they were completely surprised. And surprise is a great element of success. Remember the pagers? Remember Nasrallah? That's part of breaking up the Iranian axis. And we achieved that with surprise. And I think we achieved a great surprise the other day when we started. We could wait and wait and wait. They'd string along the negotiations. We gave them a chance. I gave them a chance. But it was clear they were not serious about it. It became clear, I think, to the United States as well, because the president was very clear. He said, you can't have nuclear weapons. And in order not to have nuclear weapons, you can enrich uranium. And they basically strung everybody along. And it was clear to us it was going nowhere. I could wait and wait and wait until they officially declared that the talks were off, or they, and we'd officially declare that we're going to attack them. That's not how I conduct wars, and it's not how Israel conducts wars. So we're geared to do whatever is necessary to achieve our dual aim, to remove two existential threats, the nuclear threat and the ballistic missile threat. And we're doing that as we speak now in Tehran, but we're not bombing the population. We're telling the population, leave. So when we hit the targets embedded in civilian areas, you won't be hurt. And there's now mass migration from Tehran right now. That's what's happening. So because we're giving them forewarning.
Mr. Prime Minister, what proportion of Iranian air defenses do you think you've taken out? Back in October, the air defenses were really decimated. Now you say you have kind of control of the skies as you're picking these targets, yet these missiles and drones are still coming your way as they attack, as you point out, civilian areas inside Israel.
Well, you're right. First of all, we're doing it.
Deliver unparalleled IT efficiency, security, and support with Ninja One's unified IT management.
Well, you're right. First of all, we're doing a lot to prevent a lot of them from coming in, but it's not hermetic. You're quite right. But when I say we have control of the skies, you correctly said that they had a very dense anti-aircraft batteries between the western border of Iran and Tehran, and basically are incredible. There's no other word to describe it. Our incredible intel guys and the Mossad, they did wonderful work to peel off the layers of protection that they had, and our pilots took them out. And so we have a free highway to Tehran, and we can now pick off the targets that we need in Tehran and other places without having our planes shot down. And so far, none of them have been shot down. And I hope that continues. But we are absolutely resolute to remove this threat. This is what you have to do when you stand at the brink of catastrophe. And I think it's not just our test. You know, Churchill talked about the slumber of democracies. He said that democracies tend to sleep until the jarring gong of danger wakes them up. Well, sometimes it might not wake them up. Certainly, we didn't need a wake-up gong. I've been talking about the Iranian threat for 40 years. 3 years, I think, or 4 years after the Iranian regime, the Ayatollah regime, hijacked Iran and the people of Iran. I said the greatest threat facing Israel, and potentially the world, is this regime that will try to arm itself with nuclear weapons. And I've devoted a considerable part of my life, in fact, most of my life, to preventing that. And when the gong of danger sounds, and you know it's the last moment, it's the 12th hour, you've got to act. That's what responsible leaders do. And what I want, what I seek, is that the entire world will do what President Trump is doing. He's standing up for good against evil. He's standing up for the right against the wrong. He's standing up for good against bad. And I think that's very admirable. I salute you for it, President Trump.
The president's also, however, Mr. Prime Minister, calling for Iran to get back to the table, to the negotiating table. You don't seem to be saying that that's worth it. How does this end?
Well, in fact, I said it is worth it if they'll do what the president wants. And that is eliminate their enrichment capacity. You know, that's a lot better than my country, my forces, my brave pilots having to do it. It's much better that our Mossad operatives on the ground having to do it. But if they don't do it, and they certainly didn't want to do it, it became very clear, we had to act. We don't wait until we have a nuclear holocaust. That's not going to happen again.
So how does it end?
Well, it'll end when we remove those capacities, and we will.
You stop short of killing Iran's civilian.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Good Night Formula. Good Night Formula helps you get into the cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep to slow down the aging process, to be well rested, to consolidate memory, and to detoxify your central nervous system. It is very important to have a regular sleep. This has tryptophan, melatonin, GABA, and passion flower. Take this every night and get the cycles of REM sleep to improve your memory consolidation and detoxify your central nervous system. This stacks well with NAD+ and ubiquinol. I'll be talking about that shortly. Resveratrol. I've been taking resveratrol for decades. It's an antioxidant. It's going to soak up free radicals. It's going to help with the mitochondrial health. It's going to boost up energy levels. It's going to allow for youthful gene expression, and it'll help you get rid of senescent cells. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the resveratrol. Resveratrol stacks really well, and you get the max benefits of resveratrol when you stack it with C60, with NAD+, and ubiquinol. You can also stack it with Clarity Factor. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. If you spend $150 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last.
There's just military commanders, I mentioned nuclear scientists, but not the Supreme Leader, Khamenei. There is a Reuters report just moving saying that President Trump in the last couple of days vetoed an Israeli plan to kill Iran's Supreme Leader, according to 2 U.S. officials. Is that true?
I don't know if it's true or not. We'll find out. But the thing is that it's not just destroying the nuclear capability of Iran. The Ayatollah has to be eliminated. And what's going to happen is by eliminating that regime, when you push regime switch, regime change, what's going to happen is that the true secular movement within Iran, which is great, it's a very large movement, will be able to flourish and they'll have democracy. They want democracy. They don't want a theocracy. They're being held down by this theocratic regime. So it's to destroy their nuclear capability and to decapitate the Ayatollah. It's that simple. Let's see what Bibi has to say.
Yeah, there's so many false reports of conversations that never happened, and I'm not going to get into that, but I can tell you, I think that we do what we need to do, and we'll do what we need to do, and I think the United States knows what is good for the United States, and I'm just not going to get into
Okay. The Iran foreign minister today told reporters this: if Israel stops attacks on Iran, quote, our responses will stop. The attack on Iran in the midst of nuclear talks clearly demonstrates the Israeli regime's opposition to any form of negotiation. The canceled talks that were intended to take place today, he said Iran would have presented a counterproposal that, quote, could have opened doors for an all-out agreement with the Americans. So, as again, the foreign minister saying, if you stop, they will stop. What's your response to that?
Well, first of all, it's hogwash. While they were negotiating, the Ayatollah himself, tweeted again and again, death to Israel. Israel must be destroyed. So some good faith there, right? Aside from that, they had bad faith because they were cheating, and we saw it in our intel. It was very clear. And the U.S. had the same intel. Believe me, we shared it. We shared that intelligence. One of the great things about unprecedented cooperation that has happened under President Trump is that we share every bit of information. So number one, he's lying. That's not new. Iran lies all the time. They cheat. But the second point is that they say, okay, we'll stop if you stop. Stop what? You'll continue to develop your engines of death, mass death, continue to develop your nuclear bombs, continue to develop the ballistic missiles like the one that fell in Tel Aviv, near Tel Aviv today. I was there, the whole building just slammed through. Children sleeping in their beds, killed. Women sleeping in their beds, killed. Horrible stuff. Yeah, they'll stop and continue to develop the means for our extermination. That's not going to happen. So obviously, that's not said in good faith. The issue here is not de-escalation. The issue here is not ceasefire. The issue here is stopping those things that will threaten our survival. And we're committed to stopping them. And I think we can achieve them. Now, if they are willing to accept President Trump's terms, that's a different matter. I said that months ago. And I said that in my meeting with the president in Washington.
Yeah,
if you can get a deal that does it, fine. But he didn't, not because the president didn't want it. It's because Iran didn't want it, and they cheated.
Overnight, you expanded your airstrikes to include oil and energy infrastructure in Iran. Is that a different phase? What's the point?
Well, this was an oil container. It wasn't a production site, but it merely means that we're ready to take whatever action is needed. And of course, we'll take some of those actions in response to what Iran does to us. But as I said, our main targets are the military and nuclear targets, and we're taking them out with the precision and with purpose.
We're not hearing much harsh criticism from the Gulf Arab countries. There have been some statements. Saudi Arabia putting out, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia expresses its condemnation, strong denunciation of the Israeli attacks that targeted the Islamic Republic of Iran, which violated sovereignty. These attacks represent a blatant violation of international laws and norms. That was early on, but not much since then. How do you judge the Gulf states' response to what's happening now?
Well, I'll leave that to them. They can speak for themselves, but I truly believe, that we have a great future if we take out Iran. Iran has been the systematic fomenter of wars, sabotage, terrorism. They attacked Aramco, the Saudi oil facilities. They send terrorists everywhere throughout the Middle East. So I think that I have a different conception, a different future. And it was embarked on with the help of President Trump and his leadership in the Abraham Accords, where we signed peace treaties with 4 Arab states, expanding the peace, something that wasn't done for a quarter of a century. And I believe that we'll have opportunities to expand the peace as well with other of the Arab states next to us. I think they understand that Iran is a mortal threat to them as well. They have their eyes on their oil facilities. They want the waterways for the Houthis. They want to conquer the Middle East. And the one obstacle they've had so far is the state of Israel, because we're the ones fighting Iranians. And the other obstacle they have is President Trump. And I think, I'll tell you, they think that President Trump is an enormous obstacle. They think that Israel is a very big obstacle, and they're out to get us both. In fact, they tried to kill me too. They fired a missile into my bedroom window. They missed.
Wow. The Saudi Crown Prince, as you remember, in September of 23, told me he was getting closer every day to recognizing Israel and normalization. The very next day, you repeated that to me. Take a listen. Reports that you had suspended talks. No, that's not true. So you think, if you were to characterize it, are you close? Are you going to get closer? I know you heard those words from the Saudi Crown Prince. What was your response?
Well, I was delighted to hear what he had to say, and to borrow a phrase, I think we're getting closer to peace every day that passes.
Obviously, October 7th was just a few days later. Can you get back to that moment, pre-October 7th?
I think what you heard was correct. One of the possible reasons for the timing of Hamas's attack, and remember, Hamas is one of Iran's terror proxies. One of the reasons that they may have brought up the attack, not even coordinated it with others as they were supposed to do, is perhaps that they were afraid that the words of the Saudi Crown Prince and my own words were about to materialize. But they will materialize one day, I'm sure of it. And that day will be a lot sooner once we get rid of this mortal threat that Iran poses not only to Israel, but to our Arab neighbors, to Europe, to the United States, to many others.
Last thing, Mr. Prime Minister, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about the situation in Gaza. One of the reasons it's not moving forward, the normalization, is because of how that's happening. Understand that you put the onus on Hamas for everything that's happening there. But as of now, you know, we take the Gaza Health Ministry for what it is. They say the death is 55,000. The United Nations puts it at that number as well, but they're citing the Gaza Health Ministry and women and children making up half of the dead. Is there an Israeli estimate as far as the death in Gaza since the start of that operation?
Well, the ratio of civilian combatants to non-combatants is about 1-to-1, which is unheard of in such a dense urban environment. That's happening because we're telling the population leave, and Hamas at gunpoint, and sometimes shooting them, saying stay in the war zone. That's why you have, or had, a lot of civilian casualties. That is decreased, and happily, because we're doing everything in our power to separate combatants from non-combatants. The reason this war has been going on for so long is, well, one primary reason is the hostages. They've taken hostages. Remember, this is the regime that took Americans hostage.
There's 53 captives, less than half of them believed to be alive. Is that fair?
20 are alive. The rest, unfortunately, are not alive. But, you know, we started out with, we've already brought back 202 hostages, most of them alive. Some people believed in the beginning of the war, in fact, our most senior military people, they said, you will be lucky if we got one. And I said, no, I don't think so. I think that a combination of military and diplomatic pressure will get us, we can get them out. And I'm committed to getting all of them out. I've said 2 days ago, I've instructed our people to try to resume the negotiations for a ceasefire that would enable us to take Steve Witkoff, the American envoy, has made an offer to begin a 60-day ceasefire in which half of those hostages would be released right away. And I said, yes, we're ready to go. There's been some development there. I hope we're able to do that because I'm committed to getting them out. And I'm committed to getting them out and also to separate the Hamas from controlling the humanitarian aid that we're trying to give the people of Gaza, because they rob it, they steal it, and then they take a good chunk for themselves, and then they hike up the prices and give a pittance to the civilian population. So we have a plan that we devised with the help of American firms to separate the giving of the humanitarian aid to the population from Hamas control. And we're accused of starvation policies and all these other demonizations and vilifications against Israel. Look, we're a democracy fighting an island in the sea of evil, and we're doing what we can to remove this proxy, this Iran terror proxy as well. But the big problem, the big question for Israel, for humanity, for the world, for Israel and the United States, is whether we can take away the weapons of mass death from this cult of death that is in Tehran. The tyrants of Tehran will not win.
Yeah.
We, with God's help, we will win.
So just address the critics who say about Gaza that you're trying to make Gaza unlivable.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the dual purpose deodorants. These will detoxify your body and you use it as a daily deodorant. You can get it in citrus or in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree. It's made from essential oils from the Himalayas. No aluminum, no baking soda, all natural. It's for males and females. Get a couple bars for your household. Very high quality deodorants. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. Zeolite is a way to detoxify your body. It helps you to detoxify heavy metals, chemicals, toxins. It binds to them and it allows you to urinate them out in 6 to 8 hours. Take about 2 to 3 small drops, very small drops underneath your tongue, drink it with filtered water. Do that every day. If you want a more intense detoxification, put about 5 small drops to 10 small drops underneath your tongue. Drink the filtered water. Do that every day until the bottle's done, and do that once or twice a year. But it's better to do it every day. Also, make sure that you clean your environment. Keep those paints and cleaning solutions that you don't need out of the house. If you do need them in the house, put them in triple layering, so it's not degassing into your environment. Because if you breathe in those chemicals, those cleaning supplies or paints on a regular basis, and you don't even notice it, they are endocrine disruptors. So it's affecting your endocrine system and it's affecting your immune system, and you don't want that. So it's very important to clean your environment. Drink filtered water and also stay away from processed foods. Take zeolite every day and detoxify your body. Again, use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $150 or more, you get a free gift. And another great supplementation stack is the D3 and K2. D3 and K2 help to absorb calcium. And by absorbing calcium and then you're doing resistance training, guess what? You're building denser bone. Very important, especially when you get into your geriatric years. So do weight training. Make sure you take the K2 and the D3. Also make sure that you're taking in magnesium. You can get magnesium from my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Magnesium increases the efficacy of D3 to absorb calcium. But do that every day, and that's going to help to build bone density. But taking D3 and K2 also helps the vascular system. It helps your cardiovascular system by pulling out some of that calcium depositing around plaque and reducing further calcium depositing. So super important. So please go to my store, get the D3 and the K2, take it every day, and help your system out. If you spend $150 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last.
In order to push Palestinians out of the territory permanently. When they say that, what's the response?
Yeah. Well, because it's another lie. These are incredible lies. I think, first of all, no army in the history of the world has gone through the lengths that Israel has gone to separate combatants from non-combatants using millions of text messages, phone calls, you name it, everything, leaflets even, getting the population out. Otherwise, we'd have an enormous number of civilian deaths. And of course, Israel has that firepower, but we don't use it because that's our moral base. But the other thing is equally that we're not trying to destroy Gaza. We're trying to remove the threat from Gaza. And as far as the choice of people, if they want to leave or not, President Trump has given a brilliant idea. He said, look, Gaza has to be rebuilt. It's been destroyed because every place is booby-trapped. So, the population finally leaves. They overcome the threats by Hamas to shoot them, and they just leave. They tell Hamas, leave our buildings, and they almost get shot by Hamas. But when they leave, they booby-trap everything. So when we come to fight the terrorists, they set off these charges and they kill our soldiers. What we do is we bring a supercharge, it detonates all the booby traps, and that's how you have buildings destroyed. We also go into tunnels. Sometimes it's great sacrifice. Our UN ambassador, Leiter, had his son, 39-year-old father of 7, killed because he went as a reserve soldier to defuse these tunnels. But we put charges there. They blow up the tunnels are below buildings. The buildings collapse. So there's a lot of demolition in Gaza. It has to be rebuilt. President Trump said, okay, let the people have a choice. Why are they locked in? They're not locked in other battle scenes, and people leave by the millions in Ukraine, in Iraq, and Syria. They're left by the millions. In Gaza, they're locked in. He said, why? Give them a choice. If they want to leave to other locations, help them with a voluntary relocation. If they want to come back, they'll come back after the work of basically restructuring Gaza is complete. And I think that's a brilliant plan. I think it's all for the good. It's good for peace. It's good for Israel and the United States. I think it's good for Palestinians. They should be given a choice.
Mr. Prime Minister, very last thing. I asked you how long this may last. You said it's up to the Iranians. If you had the opportunity, and you do now, to speak directly to the Supreme Leader and to speak directly to the Iranian people, what are those 2 messages you'll say?
Well, the Iranian dictator, really, he's a dictator. He's a tyrant. He has sent us a message calling just about every day for the death of Israel, the destruction of Israel and America, but the death of Israel. So my answer to him is with action, not with words. But to the people of Iran, I say you're great people. You're people of great talent and genius who have been usurped by this tyranny that has robbed you of hope, has robbed you of a good life. I speak to the Iranian people directly. I don't know if you know this, Brett. I do these videos. I get millions and millions of responses. And they say, Viva Israel, bravo Israel, free us from this tyranny. And I say to them, your hour of freedom is near. Rise up, be free.
Mr. Prime Minister, we appreciate your time in the middle of a very dangerous time inside Israel. We should point out you are inside Israel. We've kept your location private since it's a security situation, but we appreciate all the time you've given us. You're welcome back on.
All right, we're going to go to Al Jazeera, I think, depending on, let's see, what other news is popping up here. You know what? I want to listen to Rand Paul on Meet the Press. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the turmeric. Turmeric is a great way to soak up free radicals, and it brings down pro-inflammatory cytokines. That's super important for your immune system, and it's super important to bring down inflammation at the vascular level to prevent plaque buildup. Ashwagandha root helps to control the cortisol levels and to control your blood glucose levels. That brings down inflammation, helps with the vascular system and your immune system. And lignans, super important to take every day. It's a powder. You mix it with soft foods, with filtered water. This helps your immune system and your endocrine system, soaks up free radicals and brings down inflammation. It stacks really well with turmeric and ashwagandha. This is a great way to improve your immune system and your vascular system. So please go to my store, get the turmeric, the ashwagandha, and the lignans. It's the 3rd pillar of my core protocol. Drink it with filtered water, super important to take every day. Use discount 5 to get $5 off any order. And if you spend $150 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. All right, let's listen to Rand Paul here.
Welcome back. Joining me now is Republican Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. Senator Paul, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. Unfortunately, I have to start with this horrific news out of Minnesota, this act of
political violence, the assassination of a state lawmaker there and her husband, 2 others injured in the hospital recovering. Senator, what was your reaction to hearing the news?
You know, I think nothing brings us together more than, you know, mourning for somebody else who's in political life, Republican or Democrats. You know, we come together about this. I was there at the shooting in 2017 when Steve Scalise almost died, just feet away from another young staffer that was shot just next to me. So I'm aware of this. I've been the victim of political violence. I had 6 ribs broken and part of my lung removed. So we know about this. We're very aware of it, but our hearts and prayers go out to the families.
Yeah, our hearts and prayers go out to the families as well. It's been 8 years since that attack, that of course, where Congressman Scalise was shot. Thank you for sharing that memory with us. I do want to turn now overseas to the Middle East. In fact, it's an active situation right now. It's our understanding that Iran is sending missiles striking Tel Aviv as we're having this conversation. You've warned President Trump not to get involved in the conflict between Israel and Iran, saying, quote, a war with Iran would make Iraq look like a skirmish. But have a look at what Senator Lindsey Graham argues should happen if Iran does not come to the negotiating table. He says, quote, if Iran refuses this offer of the United States, I strongly believe it is in America's national security interest to go all in to help Israel finish the job. How do you respond to Senator Graham's call to go all in and help Israel finish the job, Senator?
Well, his initial response was game on, and I don't consider war to be a game. The hundreds of thousands of people that potentially will now die on both sides. You know, for a couple thousand years, we've had this discussion over what is just war. Not only our civilization, but other civilizations have had this discussion. And one of the things that many people came to a conclusion was that preemptive or preventative war wasn't just. And so there is that. But there is also the idea that what happens to Iran, you imagine what happens in Iran now. Do they coalesce around their government, even though their government is unpopular? Does nationalism thrive? And you would think that they would probably be less likely to want to negotiate at this time, particularly when they may feel that negotiations were a ruse to put them at ease until the bombing happened. So I think it's going to be very hard to come out of this and have a negotiated settlement. I see more war and more carnage, and it's not the U.S.'s job to be involved in this war. Iraq was a mess. Afghanistan was a mess. And one of the things I like about President Trump is he has shown restraint. And so I think his instincts are to not be involved in this war, but there will be a lot of pressure from Lindsey Graham and others to get involved in this war. And I hope that his instincts will prevail.
All right, let's turn now to what we all witnessed here in Washington, D.C., the nation's capital on Saturday, a military parade celebrating the 250th birthday of the Army. Here in Washington yesterday. You expressed some doubts ahead of the parade. President Trump says the parade was to showcase the Army's military might, even to inspire a new generation to sign up for military service. Senator, what do you say about that argument? Could the parade have that benefit of encouraging people to sign up and enlist?
You know, I'm all for the president appearing and doing enlistment ceremonies at military bases. I've been with the president at Dover to receive home our dead soldiers. And so those who have been killed in action and to mourn their loss. But I just never liked the idea of the parade because I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and the only parades I can remember are Soviet parades for the most part, or North Korean parades. And the parades I remember from our history were different. You know, everybody remembers that famous scene of the soldier, you know, dipping the girl and kissing the girl in New York in the ticker tape parade. But we were rejoicing the end of war. We were rejoicing our soldiers coming home. And that absolutely ought to be commemorated and discussed every year, Memorial Day, Veterans Day. But we never glorified weapons so much. And I know he means well. I don't think he means for any of this to be depicted in another fashion, but I'm just not a big fan. Then there is the cost. I mean, we're $2 trillion in the hole, and just an additional cost like this, I'm not for it.
I do want to get to the debt deficit momentarily, but first, let's talk about those.
I wasn't for the parade either. I think it's a waste of money, like he said. But not just that. I just feel as though our military doesn't shouldn't be pounced around because it almost seems as though we're glorifying war. Now, maybe Americans, the American empire is just about war, you know, and that some people could make that argument. But, you know, I would just prefer it to be behind the scenes. If you see a veteran, you thank them for their service. You support the veterans. We try to have policies that help with the needs of the veteran and the military, and making sure that we have a strong and robust armed services community. But we don't need to do these parades. I thought it was a bad idea. Waste of money, and it was a bad idea. Even though I am very pro supporting of the military, very pro. So I've been like that all my life. But the thing is you know, unfortunately, we have a lot of generals, and we have a Pentagon that doesn't know how to win a war. You know? And it's just not the United States way to be trouncing around with a bunch of military equipment. I just think it was in bad taste.
Raids that have really dominated the week. We've seen them, anti-ICE raids really across the country. You're the chair of the Homeland Security Committee, which means you have oversight over DHS. I want to play some sound for you from Governor Gavin Newsom. Take a listen to what he had to say about those ICE raids.
I was in Oxnard, California yesterday, and met with a 12-year-old boy. Tears pouring down his face. His mom and dad snatched by agents. They were working the fields for over 20 years. He doesn't know where they are. He has
Well, wait a minute. They're working the fields for 20 years. If they're hardworking and they've been here for a long time, that doesn't matter. Are they here illegally? If they're here illegally, they're here illegally, and they should go home. Oh, they had a child here. They had an anchor baby, and all that, blah, 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 blah. Are they here illegally? They knew they took risks. So them working hard and how long they've been here, or they've been paying taxes, you know, somehow or some way, I don't care. Don't care. Just don't care. Get them out of the country if they're here illegally.
Family in the United States. He's here alone, a sixth grader.
Tough.
Senator, do you think the Trump deportation policy has gone too far?
Nope. It hasn't gone far enough.
You know, I live in a community, Bowling Green, Kentucky, where we have lots of first-generation immigrants. Many of my friends, many fellow physicians, you know, they're new Americans. And I often say some of the best Americans just got here. That being said, that's lawful immigration. I don't think we can allow millions of people to come across the border. It just is transformative, but not in a good way. So I think we should, if anything, maybe expand lawful immigration, but we can't have illegal immigration. We can't have open borders. Now, how we tackle this is a difficult situation because we have California governors like Newsom and the mayor of Los Angeles who are resisting federal law. And if you go all the way back to the Civil War, one of the conclusions of the Civil War, and particularly the Civil Rights era, is that there are times when the federal government will step in if local officials are resisting the law. So when people are arrested for doing bad things, they're arrested for assault, if you don't check their status and you don't deport them after that, you're disobeying federal law. And I think the one thing that brings us together, conservative, Republican, Democrat, Independent, is I think most people want the people committing crime to be deported. And if it sticks to that, I think we'll be fine. When it extends to children and workers, even the president's backed off a little bit on this. He says now we're not going to deport agriculture, hotel workers, and others. And you know, somebody on the internet this morning said, well, all you have to do is you need to change your job and be an agricultural worker.
Do you support those carve-outs, Senator? Do you support those carve-outs? The carve-outs for farm agricultural workers, hotel workers?
I'm a big advocate of the farm worker program and worker programs in general. I think he's talking about a carve-out for people who are not in the program. He's talking about people who are illegally doing that work. I think that we should do something. I've been an advocate for a policy such that we can accept more workers. And I've always thought the trade-off would be you don't get citizenship. Everybody's always said, oh, we've got to have a pathway to citizenship. What if you don't get citizenship, but you get to work and you don't have to worry and fear of deportation? I think actually many people who are here now who are working would probably accept the trade-off.
You have been one of the most outspoken Republican critics of President Trump's tax and spend bill, what he has called the big, beautiful bill. You have said it raises the debt ceiling by far too much. Trump called you, quote, the toughest vote in the history of the U.S. Senate. Senator, let me ask you, as of today, are you a yes on this bill or no?
Well, I take that as a compliment, and I talked to the president last evening after the parade, and we're trying to get to a better place in our conversations. And I've let him know that I'm not an absolute no. I can be a yes. I like the tax cuts. I actually agree with Art Laffer and the supply siders that a lot of times we cut rates, we actually get more revenue. So I don't have as much trouble with the tax cuts. I think there should be more spending cuts. But if they want my vote, they'll have to negotiate because they don't want to vote to raise the debt ceiling $5 trillion. You know, Congress is awful with money, and so you should give them a more restricted credit line, not an expansive one. Yes, the debt ceiling has to go up, but what I've said is it ought to go up 3 months at a time, and then we should have a renewed debate about the debt. We shouldn't put it up $5 trillion and wait 2 years, go through another election cycle, and be almost towards the end of the Trump administration and say, oh, whoops, we have added a bunch of debt. We should have done better. I think we should keep talking about it.
Senator, very quickly, I have 2 more questions and 1 minute left. What's it going to take to get you to a yes specifically, very quickly?
Separate out the debt ceiling and have a separate vote on it. And I won't be the deciding vote on this. Is this what I tell my supporters? I will be, if I am the deciding vote, they'll negotiate. If I'm not, they won't. So far, they've been, sending their attack dogs after me, and that's not a great persuasion technique, but I will negotiate if they come to me, but they have to be willing to negotiate on the debt ceiling because I'm conservative and I'm not going to, no longer be conservative just because the president wants me to vote for something.
All right, Senator, very quickly, let me get your reaction to Senator Alex Padilla, who interrupted a press conference that was being held by DHS Secretary Kristi Noem. He was handcuffed, wrestled to the ground. The House Speaker says he should be censured. Do you agree? Should he be censured for that?
I don't like the images of him on the ground or being handcuffed, but also didn't like the images of moms at school board meetings being handcuffed. I didn't like the images of peaceful January 6th protesters or people assembled there being taken to the ground in airports and handcuffed. So that I don't like, but at the same time, the other side to it is, can you rush a stage? Can you rush into a press conference? And I think they didn't. I think they honestly didn't recognize him. He rushed the stage. There was sort of a physical tussle. I think it could have ended with that without the handcuffs. But also, I don't think there's a complete get out of jail free that, there's no repercussions for rushing the stage and there's no criticism for rushing the stage. So I think it's a complicated story and I think we can do a better job. But I'm not about to say it's all on one side or the other.
So you would be for censuring him? You're a no on censuring him, Senator?
No. I'm not for censoring.
Okay.
I think that's crazy. I'm not for that at all.
Okay, Senator, thank you so much. Senator Rand Paul, thank you for joining us and happy Father's Day. We really appreciate it.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the NAD Plus. This is a supplement that will boost up your NAD Plus levels, that will increase your energy. NAD Plus also helps to repair your DNA, because as you get older, you get damage to your DNA and it's harder to repair it. In addition, NAD Plus helps to protect your neurons. Take NAD Plus if you're 40 years of age or older, super important to protect your neurons. And also take ubiquinol. Ubiquinol is the most bioavailable form of CoQ10 that you can purchase. Ubiquinol is an antioxidant, so it's going to soak up free radicals, reduce stress in the cell, and help the health of the mitochondria. The mitochondria will improve your energy levels, so it's going to go up. You're going to have more ATP, and ubiquinol helps to protect your neurons. Stack it together, NAD Plus and ubiquinol, to get the max benefit to protect those neurons. And stack it with C60. You can take C60 by itself, but if you stack it, you're going to get added benefits. C60, you can get in MCT coconut oil, extra virgin olive oil, or avocado oil. You can get it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. It's cheaper to get it in the higher ounce configuration because it's cheaper per ounce when you do that. In addition, C60 is a very potent antioxidant. Take a teaspoon a day, preferably on an empty stomach, every day. And what will happen is you're going to soak up free radicals and you reduce stress on the cell. and you're going to improve the health of the mitochondria. You're going to have more ATP, and your cells are going to perform better, and your tissues are going to perform better. That means over time, your organ systems, your glands, your immune system, your endocrine system, even your neurons will perform better. With your neurons, by reducing the stress on your neurons, the neurons are going to be healthier. If you have stress in your neurons, the health of the myelin sheath will start to degrade. So that would mean that your electrical signal starts to degrade and you think slower and your memory starts to fade. But if you improve the health of the neuron, then you're improving the neuroplasticity, you're thinking faster, your memory is better, and the health of the neuron is maintained and improved. And by soaking up free radicals in the neuron, you're helping the health of the mitochondria of the neuron. So you're producing lots of ATP to produce neurotransmitters. Super important. So take C60 every day. Also, soaking up free radicals at the vascular level is going to reduce plaque formation. How? When you have LDL floating around in your bloodstream and you have free radicals floating around in your bloodstream, they oxidize. The free radicals oxidize the LDL. Oxidized LDL is the beginnings of plaque formation. Well, if you have less oxidized LDL, you have less plaque. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the C60, take a teaspoon a day, every day. I've been taking a teaspoon of C60 every day since 2016, every day. And what you're going to notice is that your body is slowing down its aging process. And you stack it with things like NAD+, ubiquinol, resveratrol, clarity factor. I have a core protocol, and that core protocol is this. The first pillar, max 14, max 35, or cleanse to boost up the immune system. The second pillar, C60, to soak up free radicals. The third pillar, turmeric, ashwagandha, and ligands to boost up the immune system and help with your vascular system. And Boomer Boost is the fourth pillar to boost up those energy levels and rev up that metabolism. When you do this, you're going to have more vitality. You're going to have more energy. You're targeting all the things that are causing the aging process. When you lose the health of your mitochondria, you lose energy. Well, if you help that health of your mitochondria, you're going to boost up your energy levels. When you get older, you start to accumulate free radicals. You soak up those free radicals with taking strong antioxidants like C60. With aging, you start to have a decline of your neural connections. Well, you want to improve those with taking NAD+ and ubiquinol and C60 and clarity factor and resveratrol and Boomer Boost. See, when you take this and you stack these types of supplements together, you're slowing down the aging process. You build up muscle, you increase your bone density, and what you're doing is you're slowing down the aging process. And the earlier you do this, when you get into these different milestones of aging at the non-cerebral level, aging for most of your body starts at approximately, there's these major milestones that takes place. But you see a major difference between someone in their 20s to when they hit about 30. You see it in their face, right? A major change. Especially, you also see it in their pediatric years, different milestones of aging. But let's just focus on the adult side of this. So from 20 to 30, you start to see a major change. So about 35 to 40, about 40 years of age, there's a methylation change that takes place. And when you start to methylate genes, that means you're turning off genes that usually were expressed when you were younger, or you're reducing the ability to express as much of that gene when you were younger. So if you are taking these supplements and you're slowing down the aging process, when you're getting into those milestones at age 35 or 40, you're reducing the methylation. Therefore, when you're going into the next milestone, you're actually younger because you have less methylation. All right. So age 35 to about 40 is a major milestone. Another one is around 50, 55. And then another one at 65 to 70. All right. And so when you get into these major milestones and you're soaking up those free radicals and you're boosting up the health of the mitochondria and you improve your bone density, improve your cardiovascular health throughout these major milestones, then that methylation is less. So when you go into the next period of inflection point, you're slowly aging slower each time. There's a compound effect, all right? That you're because that major methylation that took place in your 40s wasn't at 100%. It's only at 50%. And that 50% carries on until the next major methylation point, which is around age 50. All right. And you may only have 50% of that versus 100%. And therefore, once you get past those two milestones, by the time you're age 50, you're radically younger you're radically younger biologically, even though your chronological age is 50. Your biological age could be 30. All right. So, and there's a science to this. All right. But what you're doing, if you follow the protocol that I do, you're actually slowing down that switching of the methylation. Okay. Now you get to 60, 65, 70, and there's another point. So it's important. The earlier you start this, the better off you are. But if you don't start it until your 40s, you'll benefit into your 70s. Or if you don't start it until your 50s or 60s, you'll benefit. But you get the max benefit if you start early. That's the body aging. Now let's talk about brain aging. Is different. It typically, and that brain aging, your max cognitive potential. Let's call it that. Your max cognitive potential is about age 30, age 35. And then something happens where you start to decline, but you don't notice it. It's not noticeable, but you peaked out at about 30. Now, that doesn't mean that you won't learn and you have, more insight, but that's more wisdom, not just raw energy to compute. All right. So 30, there is a slow, you peaked. Once you hit age 50, then you're going to start to see noticeable cognitive decline. All right. And then another period of time is around age 70. 60, the high 60 range to age 70. And then there's another point in time where there is the decline in neural activity. All right. So you have age 30, which is non-noticeable, age 50 noticeable, and around 65, 70 noticeable. But if you protect your neurons and keep the neural health through supplementation in this holistic approach, by keeping that neuroplasticity and doing the balancing exercises and making sure you get good blood flow, you're creating a microenvironment to maintain that neural network to carry you on. All right. So you're not having as much neural decline. Now, there's a lot more to it because neuroplastics and microplastics can lead to earlier onset of dementia. Genetics could be a problem. Environmental exposure can be a problem. That's why it's very important to approach this in a holistic way. It's not just supplementation. But when you do this on a regular basis, you can slow down the aging process as you're going through these gates. That's the point I'm making. The gates of methylation and also of cognitive decline, of neural decline. So pay attention. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $150 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right, let's go to Al Jazeera, and they're talking about Iranian missile makes impact in Israel's city of Haifa.
Let's bring you some breaking news where an Iranian missile has just made impact in Israel's city of Haifa. These are the latest scenes. Most of the latest scenes we've just seen coming out of Israel. Iran's armed forces have warned Israelis to leave the vicinity of quote vital areas. That's according to state television. There's been projectiles in the skies of Tel Aviv and Jerusalem as well. Let's go straight to Bernard Smith, who's live for us in the Jordanian capital, Amman. He's reporting from there because the Israeli government has banned Al Jazeera from reporting in Israel and the occupied territories. Bernard, so we're seeing more of those explosions. What more can you tell us?
Well, it was to be expected. We've had the air raid siren also here.
Use Kayak's Explorer tool to see just how far your budget can take you. Reykjavik? Spectacular. Then do what people do. Forget about Reykjavik for a while. 10 weirdest foods. Icelandic sheep's head jelly? Ugh. Oh yeah, Reykjavik. Back to Kayak for a great deal.
We've had the air raid siren also here over the Jordanian capital, Amman, where I am, although I haven't seen anything in the skies yet, although there were a couple of searchlights pointing over the skies earlier on. Haifa was already targeted overnight, Saturday to Sunday. It's a very strategically important Israeli port. Oil is a refinery. The Israelis said after earlier on today, before this apparent strike, the refining was still going on there. Also, there were sirens over northern Israel this afternoon. Then the Israeli military said that its missile defense system had stopped those landing and nothing was hit. Most of the damage, when Iran is sending most of its missiles, appears to happen overnight, and certainly most of the damage was last night so far, Saturday night into Sunday. At least 14 Israelis killed, 2 of them children in that, 7 killed in a direct hit on an apartment building, and 4 others killed in a hit on a Palestinian Israeli village. So it looks like Iran has resumed firing missiles again this evening. There have, as you've mentioned, already been hits on Israeli territory. We haven't seen anything going over here in Amman, but that doesn't, about just over where we're standing. But the missiles can, of course, take other routes. For now, we just know that those targets have been hit in Haifa, and as you've been reporting, Tel Aviv.
Yeah, of course, those missiles, usually you see them in passing through other countries before they do arrive in Israel. And Bernard, of course, this was expected, as you mentioned, because both sides have said that they will continue. Now, what do we know in terms of what the leadership has been saying in Israel? Have we been hearing from them at all in the last hour or so?
Well, we haven't heard from them in Israel just very recently. We know that Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, he's given an interview to the American cable network Fox News, and in that interview, he's said that regime change in Iran could be the result of Israel's attack. The Israeli military says officially that our goal is to remove the capabilities of this regime to annihilate us. The goal is not regime change. I guess the difference there is, while the military says the goal is not regime change, Netanyahu saying it could happen as a result of what we're doing. Netanyahu was also asked to comment on a Reuters report that Donald Trump had vetoed Netanyahu's plans to kill Iran's supreme leader in those first wave of attacks. Netanyahu said, "I'm not going to go there at the moment. We know that Israel had clearly compromised at some level Iran's intelligence services because they were able to identify and knew where significant figures in the military and the scientific community lived. Also, an interesting intelligence line out of Israel as well. They've arrested 2 Jewish Israelis on suspicion of working for Iranian intelligence services. We don't often hear about that. We hear, as we've heard, about how Iranian intelligence has been breached in Iran by Israel's security services, but not often the other way around. The Israelis actually say there are one of 22 cases involving thwarted attempts by Iran to infiltrate Israel.
Bernard, Israel has been receiving these rockets, not just since this escalation with Iran, because this all started after the October 7th attack. So this isn't something that the Israelis aren't used to, but we haven't seen it to this scale before, have we?
No, the Israelis are used to rockets. They've come in conflicts and fighting in Gaza before October the 7th. During and after October the 7th, there have been rockets fired by Hamas at Israel. It's inconvenienced Israelis a bit. It would lead to the closure of Ben Gurion Airport for perhaps a day and a half or so. But there's been nothing on this scale. The war in Gaza, Israelis are conscious of it, but have not really been inconvenienced by it or troubled by it. But this is something totally different. This is directly affecting the day-to-day lives of Israelis. As an indication, Ben Gurion Airport closed for at least 3 days, possibly indefinitely, Israel's main airport. Well, that's unprecedented, certainly in the last 30 or 40, maybe 50 years. So the fact that travel to Israelis' airport has been disrupted to that extent gives an indication of the disruption to Israeli life. That said, the government has said that today in Israel was a normal working day. The stock market was actually slightly up as the Israelis try to keep the economy as open as possible.
Yeah, and just to remind our viewers as to what they're seeing exactly on the screen, there's those 2 live pictures there from Haifa, and we've also been seeing Tel Aviv for both of those pictures that we're seeing. The smoke that's rising from the skyline of Haifa, that's after Iranian missiles. One of them is apparently supposed to have made impact in the Israeli city of Haifa. Let's speak to Ori Goldberg, who's an Israeli political commentator joining us live now from Tel Aviv. Ori, you're where these missiles have been flying across to Tel Aviv. What's the situation where you are?
Where I am now, we are sheltering. I stepped out of the shelter to speak with you. But apparently no missiles have been directed our way. The reports of impacts are in Haifa and in the southern part of Israel. The middle stretch, the coastal plain around Tel Aviv, has apparently not suffered any kind of real damage at all.
And Ori, we are expecting more of these missiles. Iran has promised that they're sending more of these. How is it amongst the Israelis? Is there a sense of panic? Obviously, they've been told to take shelter, but at the same time, the Israeli Prime Minister is saying that this will continue for a long time, this situation with Iran.
Well, I guess I could describe the mental state of the Israeli collective as somewhat schizophrenic. On the one hand, you've got massive support for the government for this war in Iran. Most Israelis believe it's high time Israel did something about the quote-unquote Iranian threat. And even the tens of thousands who protested regularly against Netanyahu support him in his efforts. On the other hand, there is a general awareness of the fact that the stated goals of this war with Iran are not the sort of goals Netanyahu can actually realize or fulfill. In that sense, Israelis are reminded of Netanyahu's war in Gaza, where he failed abysmally to achieve any of the goals Israel under him set itself. But Israelis are not expressing their mistrust publicly. They're not coming out against the government of the war. They are shifting into personal survival mode. You do what you have to do. You buy food, you buy medicine, you stock up on all the essentials, and you take care of yourself because you can't really expect the state to care for you. So if our government says it was a normal working day, that is very far from the Israeli reality that I'm seeing.
Sorry, I mean, when it comes to the situation at the moment for Israelis, there had been a lot of protests against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, especially calling for the end of the war in Gaza and to bring back the captives as soon as possible. Do you think that the support for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his government on this one in particular will actually go up?
Yes, it's already gone up massively. There's nothing that rallies Israelis around the flag like a good war, and Netanyahu came out all guns blazing with the first night of the strike. Israel appears to be having this way with senior Iranian leaders and with Iranian industries. The thing is, Israel doesn't seem to know what it actually wants to do in fact. Again, just like in Gaza, it doesn't have a clear goal. It doesn't have an end game. It doesn't have any sort of strategy. And Israelis, I think, are beginning to realize that, even so, the general sense of the collective vibe is one of support and even pride and, you know, being very, very certain that Israel holds the upper moral hand in this case.
Sorry, obviously you've been seeing what's been going on in the last few days. Now that a few days have gone by where we're seeing a bit more of Israel's strategy, what do you think it is here? Because initially when it started off, it was saying it was going for nuclear sites and to dismantle Iranian's nuclear infrastructure. And now it's going after the energy sector and so on and so forth. And also Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, very clearly, quite happy if there's a regime change there.
Yeah, precisely. The thing is, Israel doesn't really have a status. Israel is trying to grab whatever it can. It's using the dominance that it has managed to create for now in the skies above Iran to bomb as many diverse targets as possible. But there is no guiding thread here. There's no sense that Israel knows what it's doing. And most importantly, there's no sense that Israel knows or has any plans to stop. Without knowing when you're going to stop, a war can last indefinitely. If you insist on defining an Israeli strategy, that strategy may be that in Iran, just like in Syria, Lebanon, Gaza, the West Bank, Israel wants to be able to fire at anyone they want, kill anyone we want, for as long as we want, without paying any sort of price or bearing any sort of responsibility or suffering any kind of consequence. If there's an Israeli strategy, that's the Israeli strategy.
Okay, thanks very much, Ori Goldberg in Tel Aviv, bringing us a basis on what's happening where he is as well.
Guess which student has a better chance of getting into?
All right, let's listen to Jack Keane, General Jack Keane.
This is a Fox News alert. Just hours ago, you could hear the sirens sounding in Jerusalem after Iran sends more than 100 drones toward the Jewish state.
Iran's attack coming after Israel's sweeping strikes against the heart of Iran's nuclear program. Several top Iranian military leaders and nuclear scientists are believed to be dead. Israel says this is just the beginning of Operation Rising Lion, and Iran calling it a declaration of war.
Let's get right to Alex Hogan live from Israel. Alex, what can you tell us this morning?
Hi, Lawrence, Ainsley, and Charlie. So we are getting more and more information in the minutes and hours after all of this began, with Israel saying that it targeted Iran's nuclear capabilities as well as high-ranking military officials. Now Iran's president issued a response saying that its retaliation will make Israel feel foolish for this attack. We also know that this coordinated operation was carried out after years of planning between the IDF and Mossad. Mossad released this footage earlier this morning in a rare disclosure of behind-the-scenes footage of the scenes of Operation Rising Lion. According to Israeli officials, there were 3 phases this morning. The mission included Mossad commando units smuggling vehicles of weapons into Iran, setting up a drone base in Iran, and then activating the drones this morning and using them to hit Iran's surface-to-air missiles. At the same time, the Israeli military deployed about 200 aircraft, mainly fighter jets, to target roughly 100 sites in Iran. And today, the Israeli military says it also destroyed dozens of radar installations.
In recent months, Iran is taking steps that it has never taken before. Steps to weaponize this enriched uranium.
Now, what's very important is that, and I've been saying this since Trump's election in November, a 9/11-like event. What prevents our adversaries doing something similar where they create these dormant cells of drones that will lead to attacking different cities across the United States all at the same time? And as Trump is trying to restructure the Pentagon and the intelligence agencies, he is ruffled up a lot of feathers. So he's going to have enemies. We get an attack. It's a 9/11-like event. It's before the general election. That attack is going to hurt him in the midterms, right? And then Congress is going to be doing hearings about this 9/11-like event. And the departments of defense and our agencies that's part of the national security force is going to be asking for more money and more personnel. So Trump's walking into a dangerous zone here. There is a very high probability that we're going to have a 9/11-like event that's similar to, it's about drones now. It wasn't planes it's not planes into buildings. It's going to be drones being flown around all at the same time in different cities attacking. And because we have such a porous border, I should say, porous border, because of that, who knows what's in our country? And not only that, you can have so many people here that want to cause havoc that they can make this stuff on a 3D printer and assemble them. They could be doing this in our country right now. We're seeing the beginnings of probably a 9/11-like event.
If not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time.
Early this morning, multiple explosions were heard at Iran's Natanz nuclear power facility. The International Atomic Energy Agency says that there has been no increase in radiation levels at that facility. The Director General of the IAEA held talks with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, according to his office just hours ago. And today, Iranian state media say that 6 nuclear scientists were killed in these strikes, as well as these 3 military commanders in the Iran regime. We also just got word from Israel that the IDF killed another high-ranking commander and says that most of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps high command were killed while gathering in an underground headquarters. Iran's ministry issued the following statement saying, quote, "The aggressive actions of the Zionist regime against Iran could not have been carried out without coordination and with the approval of the United States. Thus, the U.S. government, as the main supporter of this regime, will be held responsible for the dangerous consequences of Israel's adventurism." U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio stated the following, quote, "We are not involved in strikes against Iran, and our top priority is protecting American forces in the region." It was 3 a.m. this morning local time when sirens blared across the country, waking up millions of people in Israel, telling them to get to shelters. The defense minister declared a special state of emergency after this elaborate strike in anticipation for the Iranian response. Israel said that Iran launched as many as 100 drones. We have seen that close to an end at this point in time because the IDF says it was able to strike those drones down using fighter jets, as well as Jordan able to intercept some of those drones in its airspace. As a result of that, there is a slight sigh of relief for Israelis who have been hunkering down close to their shelters for hours. Again, since 3 a.m. this morning, we are starting to see some people make their way out, walk around, and Israeli Home Command has told people that they can venture out a little bit further. That being said, the country and the region on high alert as we go into this weekend.
Yeah, we were told they were buying groceries and bottled water and stockpiling those just in case. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Alex. Let's bring in Fox News Senior Strategic Analyst, retired four-star General Jack King. General, thanks so much for joining the program this morning. You know, the Israelis really had three prongs to this almost. They went after the brains of the operation. They went after the certain facility sites, but they also went out after some of the tools that the Iranians would use to respond to this attack, right, General?
Yeah, I mean, it's a comprehensive attack for sure. It's conducted by 200 fighters and the Mossad on the ground. And by the way, the Mossad effectiveness inside of Iran for a number of years is absolutely stunning. They don't talk about what they do, but they've actually hit nuclear sites themselves on the ground in the past. They're quite remarkable. We're probably not going to reveal much about what they're doing here. But yeah, but the four targets they're after are one, air defense systems. And it appears a lot of the drones that the Mossad launched inside the country were targeting them. And obviously the nuclear enterprise itself, they hit 7 nuclear sites in doing that. The principal one being the one that's been identified in the Natanz, and they haven't identified the other ones. Ballistic missiles, and this is a very key point here. The ballistic missiles are the weapon that could damage Israel. These drones that Iran is flying, they're not a serious threat. It takes 8 hours to get a drone to Israel. There's plenty of time to intercept them. When they flew over 150 of them back in April, every single one of them was defeated. The real retaliation means of ballistic missiles. They've got 2,000 of them before the strike began. And believe me, the Israelis are very, very concerned about these ballistic missiles. And also, the other target is what you mentioned, is the leadership target itself.
General, what is exactly a ballistic missile?
It's a missile that can travel at Mach speed. It goes into space. It comes down on a target with usually a very high degree of accuracy. And the Iranians did fire these at Israel twice before. Once was back in April when it was part of that massive over 300 missile attack and drone attack. And 120 ballistic missiles were fired at Israel. Only 4 penetrated their air defense system. However, the next attack that Iran made, they didn't launch drones, they didn't launch any rockets, they launched only ballistic missiles, 120.
Receiving a negative customer review is painful for any entrepreneur. It hurts us to our soul. Seriously, it's terrible. We at Patriot Software applaud business owners who try to do a good job for their customers.
Save up to 20% on your purchase. The summer savings event is going on now at Raymore Flanagan.
Missiles, 120, over 200 ballistic missiles were launched, and 40 of them penetrated the Arrow system and the U.S. THAAD. That is unacceptable. And they were fortunately only focused at Air Force bases in the desert and the Mossad headquarters. Only 1 person was killed. But this is why the Israelis are very concerned about these ballistic missiles. If they launched hundreds of these ballistic missiles at one time and focused on population centers, a different outcome could be. So one of the primary targets here has been taking down these ballistic missiles so to reduce the effectiveness of Iran's retaliation.
General Keane, has there been anything over the past 12 hours that has surprised you about Iran's reaction or lack of reaction?
Yeah. Well, certainly they have always sort of waited after an attack to reassess, and it's usually a couple of days, and sometimes it's a couple of weeks. But throwing these drones out there is such a feeble attempt. I think they're just trying to demonstrate, mostly to their own people, that they're doing something about this. But everybody knows that that's easily to defeat. The main event will be the ballistic missiles and how many of those truly do remain. And I might say, I mean, why is Israel doing this now? I mean, it became obvious as a result of the negotiations that President Trump's team was conducting that the Ayatollah, through his negotiators, was not about to voluntarily dismantle his nuclear program. And I think, and I said this from the outset, I believe in the Ayatollah's mind, he believes he would rather have the airstrike against him and recover some of that. In other words, survive to build again, rather than voluntarily dismantle a program that could be verified by independent inspectors. The second thing is, we all know, and the Prime Minister is saying so, Iran was accelerating their program while the negotiations are going on, their nuclear program. And the third thing, and then this is important, they were attempting to recover their air defense systems that Israel was so successful in destroying back in October.
So, General, let's talk about this next step, because the president has made it very clear in his post this morning, he's still open to talk. They can choose peace still, but it looks like the Iranians have already canceled the talks going forward. That was pretty much expected, but the president is still opening up the door while still telling them in that same post, I'm going to give Israel even more weapons. And I don't think you're ready for that.
Yeah, well, I do think, obviously the strength that we're displaying here in terms of, and it's going to be a successful impact upon the Iranian regime, gives negotiators a fair amount of leverage, not only dealing with the remnants of a nuclear enterprise, but Iran's malign behavior in the region. I mean, funding their proxies and state sponsorship of terrorism. So there's a lot still here to talk about, certainly. And I think the days unfold in front of us in terms of the Israelis and how long this is going to take. This is conditions-based, and what do I mean by that? They have to do bond damage assessments, which they're doing in some level of detail right now, and their intelligence is exquisite, to determine how much has been damaged and the targets they have assigned to themselves. And based on that and its success in the unfolding days ahead will determine how long this operation continues. And certainly they're talking to President Trump's team about what has taken place and providing feedback. And I would expect that we're providing some intelligence and logistics support. But the other thing the United States can provide, and I believe we're committed to it, is if this ballistic missile attack comes as we're expecting it to come, then the United States can also assist in defending Israel with other nations in the region, much as has been done before, that was put together by the CENTCOM commander, Eric Carrillo, if you can remember how well that was done when those 300 fuselage of drones, rockets, and missiles came at Israel back in April. The Israeli provided the main defense, but also the multinational force of the United States was significant in enhancing that defense.
Do you expect that in hours, days, weeks?
It's hard to predict the Iranians, as I said. They normally take some time before they respond, and sometimes as much as 2 weeks in the last year. So we'll see how much they were able to recover from this strike. And listen, this rocks their command and control. Not stated is, I'm confident the Israelis have gotten into their command and control and be able to gather and put together an intelligence and a re-attack plan based on what resources are left. So there's a recovery that's going on inside of Iran right now in terms of what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. Certainly they are going to retaliate, but I hope the Israelis stay at this and they'll continue to focus on a nuclear enterprise, but they're also a prime focus will be the remaining ballistic missiles that they can get to so that the effectiveness of the retaliation will be reduced.
Yeah, so General, they are said, the Ayatollah says death to America is not just a slogan, it's a policy. They want to wipe Israel and America, they say this out loud, off the face of the earth. So what does retaliation look like if we have taken out 7 of their nuclear sites, or Israel did? If the ballistic missiles, if all, I think you said 2,000 ballistic missiles were there before the strike, if all of those are gone?
Well, if they take their ballistic missiles out, they don't have much in terms of effectiveness. The Air Force is 1970s vintage that we gave to the Shah. And the reality is they don't have any consequential Navy. It's patrol boats and frigates. Their land force is large, but is poorly led, poorly trained, and poorly equipped. Their business has always been rockets and missiles and providing support to their proxies. Their proxies have better capability than they have themselves when you look at Iran comprehensively. Those have always feared going to war with Iran is going to be a major event here. It has never been that. Iran does not have any military effectiveness to stand up against the United States and Israel in terms of an all-out war. I don't see that in the offing at all.
General Jack King, thank you so much for joining us.
Appreciate you.
I'm Steve Ducey. I'm Brian Kilmer.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the heirloom barley. Heirloom barley will help to detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals with superoxide dismutase. This is a powder. It's a high-density protein. You take a scooper a day, mix it with soft foods, filtered water, milk, or even a smoothie. Take it every day. Very important for your overall health. And you can take it separately or stack it with the Boomer Boost. And Boomer Boost is 68 nutrients that you should be taking every day. It has a very comprehensive compound profile. Take a look at the label on my store. And with Boomer Boost, you're going to be targeting multiple systems. You're going to be targeting your vascular system, your heart. It's also going to target your brain function. It's going to help with your musculature, your energy levels, and your metabolism. It'll help you to lose weight, and you'll have a steady burn of energy throughout the whole day. You will not be tired. You'll have vitality. You'll have a lot of energy to go throughout the day. And what you'll notice is that within 72 hours, you'll want to do more. You'll want to work out more or just be more active, which is very important. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the Boomer Boost, take it every day. It's a powder. Take a full scooper each day, mix it with soft foods, filtered water, milk, or even a smoothie, but take it every day as your breakfast or your lunch. You'll save money. In addition, you're going to lose weight. And by losing weight, you're going to get healthier. And it's going to help you to control your A1C levels. So there's lots of things that this helps with. And if you stack it together, either the Boomer Boost with the heirloom barley or the Boomer Boost and the Gladiator barley, you get even added benefits. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Boomer Boost, the heirloom barley, or the Gladiator barley. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. And if you spend $150 or more, you will get a free gift until supplies last. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. That's the end of my broadcast. The big question is how the markets will react to what happened during the weekend, especially in the oil markets, and how this will accelerate. Now, again, I think that oil has gone up too fast, but we'll see what happens in the Asian and in the UK session and how that translates into the United States session for trading. There may be a little bit of a blip up above $74 a barrel, but then it'll probably come back down. So what I'm doing is I'm shorting oil. I'm not long in oil. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the great products I offer. Watch the live stream that I'll be doing on Monday morning, so tomorrow morning. And we're going to go over the markets, cover any breaking news, and you'll see live trading going on. So please please follow me on Rumble and on YouTube. Watch that live stream, and I also live stream on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day.